Chapter 1. The Beanpole and the Pomeranian Kuin. Izuku Midoriya always wanted to be a hero. Ever since he first could see, hear, talk, and understand, he always latched onto the idea of becoming a hero, someone that protects people and fights off evil. And it all started when he first saw All Might's debut video, where he single-handedly saved hundreds of people in a city. He was inspired, and like any child would, immediately idolized All Might. But who wouldn't? The tall and immensely muscular man is this generation's symbol of peace after all, the number one hero. That wasn't the Izuku Midoriya of this timeline. The Izuku Midoriya of this timeline is essentially the same with many differences. He didn't have much interest in being a hero unlike his original self, though he was later influenced to be one by his best friend Katsuki Bakugo and many more people. The Izuku in this timeline isn't quirkless, which resulted in a different path. Not one where he shoulders the burden of one for all, personally given by All Might himself. This is the path where fate was a little bit playful and decided to give him the most ridiculous quirk in the world. Inko Midoriya always knew that her child would be special, not in the same way as other parents usually think of themselves, but in a way like a special person, or better yet a god whispered to her specifically. She only needed one look at her newborn baby to realize that this child will make the world shake one day. And she never would doubt if it was in a literal way. Hisashi Midoriya sighed with a fond look on his face as he looked at his boy. The baby looked so small and fragile to him, and he was sure that he could probably break Izuku if he wasn't careful, a fact that made him worry. Hisashi promised that he would keep Izuku safe from any harm, at least until he was sure that his boy could handle himself on his own just fine. He felt a bit agitated over the fact that he doesn't have much time to spend here in his home country. But then again, he still has to keep up with his job back in America. "Hun, you're muttering." Inko sighed as she looked at her husband, who was currently making a puddle on the floor from the sheer amount of sweat he had made. Hisashi quickly snapped out of his thoughts before he looked at his wife. "Oh, right, sorry." Hisashi nodded, his expression turning embarrassed while he absent-mindedly wiped off some sweat from his snout. Inko just looked amused over her husband's antics. She always found his unintentional mutterings pretty cute ever since they first met in high school. "Look, I know that you only have 3 years here before you have to go back to America, but really it's fine. You can always call us whenever you want." Inko placed her free hand on top of Hisashi's own hand before she gently squeezed. Hisashi couldn't help but smile. He always loved the feeling of Inko's hand, even if his own hand is 5 times bigger than hers. "Still, I want to be here with you too. I don't want to have Izuku growing up and only seeing his old man behind a screen." Hisashi looked at the baby with concern. "I don't want to miss out on stuff in his life, you know?" He huffed. Inko looked at her husband for a bit before looking at Izuku. "Well, you do have a month of vacation every year, right? You can always visit back here during your vacation, and we can always send daily pictures of Izuku so you can see how much he's growing up," she offered. Hisashi changed his focus from Izuku to Inko as he blinked. "Yeah, that could work. Weekly calls and a video call every month?" he added while watching a smile form on Inko's face. "Yeah, that works," she agreed before they both heard Izuku coo, telling the two that he woke up from their chatting. "Oh, banana biscuits." Hisashi moved back, fully expecting that Izuku would not react well to his appearance. Everyone did fear him for a reason after all. An 8 feet tall, immensely muscular humanoid dragon who can easily hold up an entire building if he has to and generate fire that Endeavor would be jealous of. "Stop overreacting, Ashi." Inko gave her husband a flat stare before smiling at Izuku, who immediately focused on her. Izuku, despite being a newborn baby, immediately identified Inko as his mother, so he began to coo, babble, and giggle happily. "Seriously, he won't burst out crying like you do over spoiled milk." Inko sighed, giving Izuku a smile before she gently moved him around to let him see Hisashi. Father and son looked at each other for a bit, the former with fear and hesitation, the latter with curiosity and confusion. You sure?" Hisashi looked at Inko, his hands doing weird gestures on their own to show his fear and hesitance. Inko rolled her eyes. Yes, honey, Izuku won't fear you. She nodded before sending Hisashi an encouraging expression. Inko's smile is enough to fuel Hisashi to take down the top 10 heroes in a minute. Hisashi looked at Izuku before he slowly and carefully moved closer. Hey, little guy. Hisashi went a bit closer. I'm your dad. He hesitantly offered his hand to Izuku. The baby looked at the massive humanoid dragon before looking at the large hand. In Izuku's perspective, he can only see a colossal titan looking at him. Hisashi's breath hitched, feeling Izuku's small hand, his tiny fingers touching his own. Do-wa? Hisashi dumbly breathed out. Just the touch of his boy made his worries disappear. Inko looked at the two with amusement. Think you can actually hold our boy for a bit without fainting, hun? Inko asked. Hisashi looked at Inko for a moment before he nodded, letting Inko gently put Izuku on Hisashi's hands. It took Hisashi everything to not burst out into a crying fit as soon as he felt Izuku. He's so small, yet Hisashi can't help but feel like the baby would become a titan soon. He's the size of my thumb. Hisashi looked at his son, who he can easily carry with a single hand. Inko snorted. Of course he is, you're a massive dragon, you know? Inko commented before she focused her gaze from her husband to her son. He inherited your face, dear, Hisashi mumbled. Inko just chuckled at her husband's words. Well, he did inherit your black hair too. She nodded and watched Hisashi look at the small patches of black hair on Izuku's head. You and our boy share the same eyes, the man added. I really thought he'd be leaning more to your appearance. Turns out it would be on both of us. I can tell our little boy will become popular with girls soon. Hisashi chuckled before he paused and felt a small, very small hand touch his snout. He blinked before looking a bit down to see Izuku holding his snout. He didn't even realize that he was unintentionally leaning closer to Izuku. Inko watched Hisashi practically turn into a statue, which made her eyes roll from her husband's intense reactions to any events. See, Hisashi? Our baby doesn't fear you. Inko chuckled and saw Hisashi raised Izuku up with both of his hands, as if he held the Holy Grail. Where did those lights and sparkles come from above? Inko thought to herself with a confused expression before she decided to ignore it for now and moved her attention back to her two boys. Eventually, the parents shared a glance before they smiled at each other and watched their boy fall back to sleep after he touched Hisashi's snout more. For now, life was good for the Midoriya family. Age 1. Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo met in the Bakugo residence. At first, due to Katsuki's volatile and outright violent personality despite being a 2-year-old baby, Mitsuki Bakugo thought that they would immediately start a fight. It could barely be called one, as Katsuki would just be trying to pull on whatever his small hands could. As soon as Katsuki saw Izuku, as he did to other toddlers in the nursery. Fortunately though, the two toddlers connected with each other pretty easily, which made the two moms breathe out a sigh of relief. I honestly was fully prepared that Katsuki would be trying to bite your boy, Inko-chan. I had an entire kit and everything if he did try biting your son like he did to the other kids in the nursery. Mitsuki sighed, remembering the reason why she and her husband Masaru quickly gave up on having Katsuki in nurseries, as she sat on the floor and watched Izuku and Katsuki interact with each other. Inko just chuckled and shook her head. I'm sure that your son wouldn't be that violent. Inko placed a hand on her best friend's shoulder. Tell that to the 32 parents that said otherwise. Mitsuki huffed before she quickly snapped a photo of Katsuki trying to climb on top of Izuku, the latter just letting the former do so. The sight was adorable as Katsuki ended up giving up pretty easily and just settled for laying next to Izuku, who just made more cute noises. Inko shrugged. Well, you were pretty violent when we were young. Maybe Katsu-chan would become calmer when he grows up, she suggested. Mitsuki looked at Inko for a moment before she nodded. Yeah, I'm just hoping his biting habits would not last long. Mitsuki sighed, remembering her own mother's reminders about how many things she bit when she was young. Mitsuki really didn't expect that Katsuki would experience the same thing, At least she could tease him about it later on once her boy is grown up. Hopefully it won't. Inko nodded before she looked at Mitsuki. How's your models, by the way? I heard one of them got into a relationship with another. Mitsuki blinked at Inko's question before she grinned. Ah, right. Kumiko-chan and Sumi-chan finally confessed to each other. And it only took them 2 years. Mitsuki nodded as Inko smiled. That's good to hear. I did think that those two becoming a couple had a very high chance of happening. Inko's expression turned from a happy one to an amused one. Mitsuki laughed. It was obvious that the two fell in love at first sight. It took me half a year to make them able to talk with each other before they finally stopped stuttering or just becoming a damn tomato at the sight of each other. The blonde added before she relaxed on the couch. Some of my coworkers owe me cash now. She snickered, remembering the bets between her workers and models. Inko just sighed at her best friend's habits on betting over the most random things to make a quick profit. Meanwhile, the two babies were now busy with their blocks. They were somehow working together, stacking one block on top of another. It took them a while to form 2 towers, but when Katsuki finally placed the last block on the second tower, they both giggled and clapped their hands. It didn't take Katsuki a moment to topple the tower and make their hard work collapse into a mess. Izuku just tilted his head before he looked at Katsuki. They stared at each other before. Boink. Izuku lightly slapped Bakugo with a cartoonish carrot plush. Boink. In return, Bakugo also slapped Izuku with his own celery plush. The two babies stared at each other before they narrowed their eyes. An agreement was made. They would together take over the world once they became big like their own mom and dad. For now, they will resume with their playtime. H4. Okay, but when is my quirk coming? Katsuki did not pout when he asked Izuku that question. Izuku looked at his best friend with a frown before he sighed. Mom said that quirks come when we're 4 or 6 years old. And since we're already 4, we just have to wait. Izuku repeated the same words he had been repeating for the past half hour to Katsuki. Katsuki huffed. He was never a patient person after all. Why can't my damn quirk already wake up? Some of our classmates already got theirs. He grumbled before he tossed a pebble across the river, watched it skip before it stopped and sunk. Maybe your quirk factor is lazy, Izuku replied, copying Katsuki's action of stone skipping. Katsuki looked at Izuku and huffed. If mine is lazy, then I bet yours is lazier, Katsuki retorted. Nah, powerful response, enough to make All Might stagger. Katsuki wore a deadpan expression. Izuku, you literally fall asleep everywhere if you stand still for more than 5 seconds. Izuku stopped tossing pebbles through the river to look at Katsuki and collect more. You don't have proof of that, Kaken. He childishly blew raspberries and watched Katsuki's expression turn from flat to irritated. Katsuki huffed and went back to skipping pebbles. Shut up, he muttered before he stood up and looked at the small pebble in his hands. With a sigh, Katsuki tossed the pebble with more force than usual. KR boom! A small explosion popped and sent the pebble flying past the river. The sudden pop startled the two boys, especially Katsuki, as the source of the explosion came from his hand. Ha! Izuku looked at the frozen Katsuki with surprise. Katsuki looked gobsmacked before he looked at his own hands. W.O. Izuku, I think this is my quirk? Katsuki said. His expression turned from surprise to glee as sparks began to pop in his hands. Izuku stood up and quickly went closer to Katsuki. Explosions! Izuku tilted his head, watching Katsuki pop more explosions with awe. I think so. Katsuki nodded before he clenched his fists and stopped creating more explosions. Awesome, they both muttered before they looked at each other. We gotta tell Auntie Mitsuki, Izuku stated before he noticed Katsuki was already running away and laughing as he waved his arms around and popped more explosions. Izuku sputtered in shock before he began to chase Katsuki. Hey, wait for me, he cried out. Havia quirky, havia quirky, havia quirky, havia quirky, havia quirky, havia quirk. Katsuki repeated with a happy smile on his face, popping more explosions as he ran. H5. Today was Izuku's birthday. Like his past birthdays, only close family friends attended, which is as expected, only the Bakugu family. They celebrated at the Midoriya household as always. Hey, Izuku, what do you think your quirk would be like? Katsuki asked and helped Izuku open the rest of his gifts. It was still a surprise to Katsuki that Izuku had a lot of aunts and uncles, which resulted in a total of almost 40 gifts per birthday. Izuku shrugged at Katsuki's question. I don't know, maybe it'll be something cool like Dad or maybe something similar from Mom, he replied. I bet your quirk will be strong. Uncle Hisashi's pretty strong, right? Katsuki huffed as he sat down on the floor. The two boys looked at Hisashi, who was busy catching up with Masaru. Both men laughed at something, though Hisashi's laugh was more booming, almost like the two boys' favorite hero, All Might. But then again, Hisashi did look like All Might if the latter had a dragon mutant quirk. Yeah, Dad's pretty strong. I think he can lift a car easily. Izuku nodded with a smile. He didn't notice Inko quickly taking a photo nearby. Maybe he can, he's big like All Might, Katsuki mumbled. To him, All Might is still unbeatable and the strongest, but it doesn't mean anyone else can be like All Might. Katsuki paused and looked at Izuku with a puzzled expression. Hey Izuku, why don't you want to be a hero? Katsuki asked. Izuku looked confused from Katsuki's question. Well, I don't know, I just never thought of becoming one. Izuku tilted his head. Katsuki pouted at his best friend's simple, and in his own opinion, stupid answer. Why? We can be a hero duo like that new duo, Water Hose? But better obviously. Katsuki sat up and crossed his arms. Izuku shrugged. Maybe, but I really don't want to, sorry. He still rejected the idea, making Katsuki frown. Fine. The blonde then grabbed one of his All Might toys and looked at it for a moment. If you can't be my sidekick or teammate, you'll be my #1 fan then, Katsuki offered, making Izuku smile. Yeah, I'll still be your best friend too, right Kaken? Izuku asked. Katsuki just nodded with a smirk on his face. Obviously, now wanna help me draw? Katsuki handed Izuku a black crayon. The black-haired boy nodded and placed down an All Might-themed sketchbook for them to draw on. Sometime later, Katsuki paused as he noticed that something was off, which made him stop drawing. He stared at Izuku. Hey Izuku? What is it? Izuku stopped drawing to look at Katsuki with confusion. Katsuki pointed at Izuku's hair. Is it just me, or is your hair floating and changing colors? He asked, his expression being confused and concerned. What do you mean? Izuku's brain immediately stopped as soon as he saw his black hair beginning to float just like his friend said. His hair color began to invert as well, starting from the roots until it reached the tips. It began to curl, before it became swirls, as his hair began to billow gently, similar to fire. He didn't notice a smile growing on his face, a smile that was too wide for his face. FSSSH. Smoke began to seep out of the boy's back and shoulders before it transformed into rubber-like clouds that floated around his neck. His body seemed to gain thick, black outlines that made him stand out from the world. Izuku wanted to start laughing for no reason. Due to the Izuku being 5 years old, his immediate action was to call his parents. Mom! Dad! Izuku immediately cried out, causing Inko and Hisashi to stop their chatting with Mitsuki and Masaru. Their expressions turned from fond and happy to serious and deadly respectively. My baby! What's wrong? Did you get hurt? Did you try? Oh. Inko worriedly bombarded Izuku with questions before she stopped and noticed her son's hair. Hisashi followed and performed an award-winning slide to stop his momentum. What is it? The Dragon Man asked before he also noticed Izuku's hair. I think that's a quirk. Inko stated the obvious as Hisashi nodded, his face wearing an almost comical stunned expression. My boy's got his own quirk. Hisashi recovered from his stupor and quickly grabbed Izuku by the waist and hoisted him up while laughing. "Congratulations!" Mitsuki cheered with Masaru before she hummed, looking at Izuku with confusion. "But what is his quirk exactly? It's not like Inko's weak pull or Hisashi's dragon quirk though." She tilted her head. "That? You make a good point." Hisashi nodded, looking puzzled as anyone else in the house. He then looked back at Izuku. "Hey kiddo, you think you have any idea what your quirk is?" he asked. Izuku tilted his head. I don't know. I do feel funny though," he replied as Hisashi gently put Izuku back on the floor before he closely inspected Izuku's transformed hair. "Well, your new hairstyle does resemble fire, related to me being a dragon, I think." Hisashi lightly scratched the side of his head. "And it's deafening gravity, so that can be related to Inko's pull," he continued. "Maybe try pulling something?" Katsuki suggested while looking at his best friend with curiosity. Izuku nodded and looked at the dropped pencil on the floor before trying to pull it closer. The pencil didn't react, making Izuku pout. "Doesn't work," he sighed. Inko tilted her head and kneeled next to Izuku, giving him gentle rubs behind his back. "Don't worry, Izuku. Your quirk's still new, so of course it wouldn't be noticeable at first. We can visit the doctor to see specifics about it," Inko said. "Well, it's obvious that you two would be leaving for the hospital. We're gonna leave now if you wouldn't mind, Inko?" Mitsuki nodded and got off from the couch as Inko nodded. Inko glanced at Mitsuki. "Sure. Do tell me the rest of our talk later on the phone though." Mitsuki just snickered at Inko's request. "Tell me about what your quirk is later, okay?" Katsuki requested. Izuku looked at Katsuki before nodding and waving as the Bakugo family left. Hisashi huffed before he carried Izuku up. "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get going." Hisashi chuckled, watching Izuku's expression turn excited. "Careful, honey, you might drop Izuku-in." Inko sighed and earned a nod from Hisashi. Later, at the Mandalo Hospital, the Midoriya family went through the necessary paperwork, waited for their turn for half an hour, and finally got inside their designated doctor's room. "Good afternoon, Midoriya family," the doctor offered, taking a seat at a desk chair. Hisashi opted to just remain standing while Inko and Izuku sat on their own seats. "Good afternoon, Dr. Uchiha." Inko and Izuku replied politely, though Izuku sounded more excited as expected. "Please, just call me Sakura. It's been years ever since we first met. We might as well consider ourselves friends, no?" Sakura chuckled as Inko and Hisashi nodded. Sakura was pretty much Izuku's doctor since birth. "Now, I'm guessing that Lil Izuku-kun here finally awakened his quirk?" She leaned forward with a curious expression. Izuku nodded at the doctor's question. "Yeah. I'm not sure what it is though." Sakura just smiled at Izuku's unsure response. "Well kid, quirks are hardly what they seem to be. That's why we diagnose and test them," she chuckled. "But moving on." Sakura changed her attention from Izuku to his parents. "Mr. Midoriya's quirk is dragon, right?" Hisashi nodded at Sakura's question. "Yep, it gave me a dragon appearance and form. Kinda wish I could look normal like my little sister Ryuko," he muttered, remembering the difference between his quirk and Ryuko's own. Hisashi still felt a bit jealous of Ryuko being able to keep her human appearance while he's stuck between a humanoid dragon or a gigantic full dragon. Izuku blinked, remembering his dad's full dragon form that was showcased on his 4th birthday last year. It was easily 3 times bigger than Auntie Ryuko's own dragon form. "And Mrs. Midoriya is weak pull?" Sakura continued. Inko nodded and brought over a pencil with telekinesis. "It's actually just pull, but since I barely trained it, it never became capable of pulling anything else besides small objects." Inko added. Her quirk could have been easily one of the most strongest quirks out there if she had trained it. But then again, arteries, eyes, nails, teeth, and more are considered small objects. Inko Midoriya is a dangerous person. None dared provoking her. So, we can expect that Izuku here would either have a mutation of both quirks, or have one of yours passed on in some form? Sakura nodded before taking a look at Izuku's strange hair and noting it down in a notepad. Which generation in your own families do you two belong to? Sakura asked, glancing at Inko and Hisashi. Fourth, Inko answered. Sixth, Hisashi answered before he gently ruffled Izuku's hair and widened his eyes in surprise. Izuku's hair felt a lot softer than it was. It was like touching clouds. Does Izuku-kun have two-toe joints? Yes, we checked it from Dr. Tsubasa. Inko nodded. Sakura's happy expression turned sour. She almost looked offended from just hearing the other doctor's name. That quack, Ujiko Tsubasa? Ugh, you shouldn't trust him. He easily judges if kids have quirks or not by that outdated study of quirk factors being involved over the amount of toe joints a child has. She grumbled. I insist that you two stop visiting that man. I can't even be sure if he really has a medical license. Sakura continued before she sighed and regained her composure. Told you so, Hisashi whispered to Inko, who just sighed and nodded. Moving on, Sakura sighed. What do you feel right now, Izuku? She asked, now changing her attention back to Izuku. Izuku shrugged at the doctor's question. Weird? I also feel light though, and my heart. It also sounds funny. He responded, unsure. Sakura nodded and moved closer before she used a stethoscope to hear Izuku's heartbeat. Doom-dut-da-da. 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 Well, it is strange. No, it does sound like a musical rhythm. Definitely strange. Sakura mumbled. Hisashi tilted his head in confusion. Strange. He muttered with concern, his enhanced hearing letting him hear the doctor's quiet mumbling. Sakura nodded. Yes, Izuku-kun's heart beat a lot louder than normal too, almost sounding like drums. It's beating to a certain rhythm too. Does it feel bad to you, Izuku-kun? Izuku shook his head at Sakura's question. No, I feel great, actually, he mumbled, glancing at his own chest. I'm guessing that my boy's got the heart of a dragon. Hisashi chuckled and crossed his arms. Sakura hummed. It's stronger than yours, actually, Mr. Midoriya. She shook her head. It seems that Izuku-kun's quirk here is much more complex than yours. Sakura sighed and stopped listening to Izuku's heartbeat. It could take an entire day, or possibly a month with many appointments to figure out what his quirk really is, as it can't be a simple evolution of either you or Mrs. Midoriya's quirk. She added, Is there any other option that wouldn't take that long, Doctor? Inko asked and gently held Izuku's hand as the boy curiously played with his hair. Sakura hummed at Inko's question as she sat back down on her chair. Well, there I do know a guy who can help. He's just extremely pricey about it, but then again his quirk gives a full explanation and proper name of what someone's quirk is. Hisashi tilted his head while Inko raised a brow. How pricey are we talking? He asked. 100,000. The doctor answered. Inko's expression took on a comical one as she gasped at the price. TT, that's $500,000, she exclaimed. Deal. Hisashi didn't even hesitate for a second as he looked at Inko's shocked expression with amusement. What? You know well that I run a massive company back in America. He chuckled. All right. I just forgot. Inko nodded with an embarrassed expression. She never was able to normalize the fact that Hisashi, and herself by extension, is rich enough to throw money out like it's worthless paper, even after 10 years since they first married. All right, I'll make a quick call then. Sakura nodded and turned around to pick up her phone from the table. The two parents nodded before they directed their attention back to Izuku. Hey champ, what do you say about getting some ice cream after we're done here? Hisashi offered. Yes, please. Izuku nodded eagerly with a bright smile. It took Inko everything not to squeal after seeing her adorable boy's smile, which somehow looked a lot more bright than usual. After around half an hour, a knock was heard on the door. Oh, that must be him. Come in. Sakura quickly got off her chair. The Midoriya family watched as a short, portly man that they can only assume is a doctor due to him wearing a coat entered the room. "Good afternoon." The man nodded. "Now who's the youngin' that I'm gonna be using my quirk on?" he asked before noticing Izuku, who waved. "That one, I assume?" Sakura nodded at the man's question. "Right then, I'm Dr. Hirulik and my quirk is called Observe. It lets me observe objects or people and be given an explanation or a record of what they are along with a predetermined name," Hirulik explained before he grabbed a sheet of paper and a pen from the table. Izuku tilted his head and showed curiosity. "Predetermined names?" Izuku inquired. Hirulik glanced at Izuku before he nodded. "Yes, it's not a well-known fact that quirks actually come with predetermined names. Nobody just realized it since most quirks are non-sentient. With my quirk, I was able to know what the supposed name of the quirk should be, though I wouldn't stop anyone from renaming their own to whatever they want." Hirulik nodded again after he finished his explanation. Hirulik then held his hand out. "I'll need you to hold my hand for my quirk to take effect," he instructed. Izuku looked at Hisashi and Inko with worry, but the couple just nodded and smiled at him encouragingly. "Twing. Fascinating," Hirulik muttered as soon as his quirk activated the moment Izuku held his hand. The only way that the other three adults in the room noticed that the short doctor's quirk activated is by the way his eyes shined brightly. "Well?" Inko tilted her head as she waited for Hirulik's results. Hirulik raised a hand. "Give me a moment. This child's quirk is, let's say, very amazing," he requested before letting Izuku go. Then he got on a chair and began to write on the paper. "Here, Izuku-kun." Sakura sighed as she offered a lollipop to Izuku, who happily took it. "Dr. Hirulik might look strange, but his quirk is accurate, so don't have any doubts about it," she vouched. Inko and Hisashi shared a look with each other before they nodded. Hisashi chuckled before gently patting Izuku's head. "Hear that, kiddo? Doc said your quirk's amazing." "Why, yeah. I can't wait to show it to Kakin." Izuku nodded. His hands were already waving around as an outlet to his excitement. Despite not wanting to be a hero, Izuku is also a child, and like any child of his age, he is very excited about what exactly his quirk is. "There, I'm done." Hirulik nodded and set the pen down after writing all of the contents that his quirk provided. "I'll be off then, Dr. Uchiha. I expect the payment will be sent later." He huffed and got off the seat. The old doctor gave Izuku a friendly pat on the shoulder before leaving through the door. Sakura rolled her eyes at the other doctor's attitude before she sighed and grabbed the paper from the table. "All right, let's see," she mumbled before her eyes widened. "Oh." Inko and Hisashi immediately looked worried at the sight of Sakura's glasses comically gaining some cracks. Is there something wrong?" Inko asked. Sakura repeatedly looked at the paper and back to Izuku several times before she repositioned her glasses back to place. "There isn't. In fact, this is outright amazing, maybe even considered ridiculous. I suggest just looking at the paper yourself." Sakura wiped off a bead of sweat from her temple as she handed the paper to Inko, who then handed it to Hisashi. "Hold on, where's my glasses?" Hisashi muttered as he looked at his pockets. "I have it, hun." "Ah, thank you, dear." Hisashi blinked in surprise before he took the glasses from Inko's hands and wore them. "All right, let's see." Hisashi hummed as he began to read the paper. "Oh, butterscotch pie." Like how Sakura reacted earlier, Hisashi froze. Inko looked at her frozen husband with a flat stare before she took the paper and read it for herself. "Okay. What is it that's making you two free? Oh." Eventually, the two recovered from their stupor as they both looked at each other and then to Izuku. "Yep. Ridiculous, all right." Hisashi nodded before giving Izuku the paper. "I guess our boy really is special, right, Inko?" He chuckled and made sure that his wife wouldn't faint. Inko just slowly nodded, having a lot of thoughts in her mind over Izuku's quirk. Izuku looked at the paper, only for his eyes to widen in surprise. Quirk true name Freedom. Type Transformation. Description: Freedom lets the user enter a state that lets them manipulate reality or bypass physical laws of nature in order to achieve impossible feats. The quirk grants absolute freedom to do whatever he likes, making him the freest kid and later man in the world, and quite possibly also the strongest. The user gains a completely rubbery body. This effect stays even outside the transformed state, but it would be very limited and would not allow the user to manipulate their surroundings as their transformed state could do. He will be invulnerable to blunt force, but vulnerable to sharp objects. Transformation condition. The user has to force their heart to beat in a specific rhythm. The rhythm is only naturally known and explainable to the user himself. If the user is in a death state, they can easily make their heart start beating again, and if they do, they get brought back to their peak condition, though once they return to their base state, they would rapidly age for an hour before fully returning back to normal. Never mention this to anyone. RIP, and do not include this piece of info on the official paper and logs. I will call a colleague of mine to wipe this entire kiddo's quirk info later for safety purposes. I'm sure Midoriya Hisashi knows who would be eagerly looking for the boy if his quirk's true description is revealed. Drawbacks. The user is invincible to any damage during the transformed state, but if he gets exhausted enough, the quirk will forcefully deactivate the transformed state. The user is still vulnerable to sharp objects outside of their transformed state. The user is, or will likely become, easily bored. It is suggested to give him something he can use to distract himself. Example: Rubik's Cube. Side effects: cosmetic/mutations. He wouldn't be able to show muscle growth and would remain thin or scrawny when he grows up. Could have been added as a weakness/drawback if the muscle density/strength doesn't apply, but it does, just not visually. Possible/unconfirmed mutation. Izuku Midoriya would receive Hisashi Midoriya's height despite not receiving any mutations that could be considered dragon-like. The user's body is completely made out of rubber, from cells to organs, basically everything. He exerts a lot of energy just from breathing or walking. He will become a very heavy eater due to the fact he will need to burn through a lot of calories. The user, or the what's around the user, would produce cosmetic and comedic effects on things he interacts with during their transformed state. Doctor's note: this kid's quirk is a ridiculous and outright impossible level of evolution from Inko Midoriya's weak pull quirk, as Izuku Midoriya is essentially using an absurd form of unexplainable kinesis on reality and his own self. The reason for this absurd level of evolution could be due to Izuku Midoriya's quirk factor being simply that strong to trigger an awakening from Inko Midoriya's pull quirk. TLDR: quirks are weird. The boy's quirk is part of the unexplainable group. I myself hardly believe my theory of why his quirk became like this. And give the kid a constant use license. His body is permanently cartoony, like rubber. Freedom. Izuku muttered the name of his quirk. He looked stunned yet amazed. He never really thought that his quirk would be this cool. Just like a true dragon. My boy's free as the skies. Hisashi laughed and quickly grabbed Izuku and carried him up. Izuku yelped at Hisashi's sudden move before he began to laugh as well. While the two boys were busy laughing and celebrating, Inko just smiled. Sakura also smiled, just happy for Izuku as she already saw him as her honorary niece for how many times he visited her in the hospital if he ever walks by. Oh dear, I could already tell how much harder taking care of Izuku will be. Inko sighed, wiping off some sweat from her face. Sakura chuckled at Inko's words. I can already tell how much of a ruckus he would bring with that quirk of his. She nodded and watched Inko's expression turn into a weary one. Don't remind me. Inko huffed and just opted to continue watching her husband and son play around happily. Age 14, present time. Yo, Izuku. Good morning, Kaken. Izuku and Katsuki were still best friends as they were since they were babies, though they both know that they are practically brothers in all but blood. Can you tell that the hag wants Auntie Inko over at the house later again? Katsuki requested as he joined Izuku and walked next to him. His scowl and resting bitch expression were present as expected. Katsuki grew up to be a confident delinquent who isn't afraid of popping some explosions here and there to the occasional asshole that tries messing with them both. He got into a lot of fights, though all of it was instigated by the other persons, but he never started one. Somehow. Don't call Auntie Mitsuki a hag. And sure, I'll tell Mom about it. Izuku pouted, but he nodded at Katsuki's request. Izuku became more confident like Katsuki, though he became a lot more playful than violent compared to the latter. His quirk is a cheat after all, granting him the freedom to do anything he wishes. He also became very tall and lanky, as Dr. Hirolik said when his quirk got diagnosed, as he now stood at 7 feet 2 inches feet. No, fuck off beanpole, Katsuki scoffed. We still heading to the arcade after school? He asked before kicking a pebble forward. Izuku shrugged. Well, we don't have anything else to do later. I've got my chores done and Dad's not calling till Friday as usual, so nothing's on my schedule. How about yours? Katsuki shook his head. Same thing. Got all of the old hag's list done and my assignments all ready for next week. He sighed and kicked the same pebble forward before he glanced at Izuku. What's up? Izuku asked after he noticed Katsuki's stare. Why re you wearing that shit? The straight jacket? Izuku asked, which earned him a nod from Katsuki. Yeah, what's up with that? I never asked about it, so I thought now's a good time to do so, Katsuki said. Izuku shrugged. Ran out of clothes again, so I just wore this. Katsuki blanched. It makes people think you're some psycho, or someone that escaped from a mental hospital, he retorted. To be fair, with the more or less deranged smile that seemed to never disappear on Izuku's face, he did look like one. Can't deny the first one, Izuku snickered. And relax, I'll get laundry done soon, and I personally think it's fashionable. He then sighed. Besides, I have my hands free. No locks on 'em or anything, so really this is just a glorified jacket. Izuku played jazz hands just to emphasize his point. You have a shit sense of fashion then. Fuck you, Izuku huffed. I ain't gay. Izuku snorted. Yes you are, you're literally crushing on Kirishima from the other classroom. No the fuck I don't? Katsuki hissed while looking flustered, just proving Izuku's accusation. Ha! Yes you do, Izuku laughed. I hate you. Katsuki looked miserable while Izuku continued laughing. Love you too bro. Izuku just chuckled before he finally stopped and resumed walking. Izuku and Katsuki eventually reached their destination, their school, Aldera Middle School. The school, it can be called well-lived, but really it's just old, and both boys, along with other students and even the staff there, had bets over how many more years can the school last before it finally gives out and gets replaced. The railings in the rooftop are old, some are already broken, the tilings of the floor are decorated with cracks, the windows are always left open due to the fact the classrooms barely had any functioning air conditioning, and nobody, absolutely nobody dared enter the bathrooms. Every student and staff unanimously agreed that they'd rather do their business in either the cafes, restaurants, or public restrooms nearby. There's a real question on how this shitty school is still standing. Really? Thank fuck we only need to stay here for just one more year. Katsuki grumbled, with Izuku nodding in agreement as they both walked past the gates and into the school's doors. Izuku rolled his eyes. It's literally the first day and you're already itching to fuck off Alria. Izuku was interrupted as his and Katsuki's ears were filled with mixed noises, mostly footsteps and voices chatting with another. Fucking noisy. Katsuki immediately scoffed as he continued walking, not bothering if he nudged past someone's shoulder. The black-haired boy just shook his head and followed Katsuki to their designated classroom. As always, ever since they first enrolled in Aldera Middle School 2 years ago, they always were in the same classroom. Some immediately noticed the two boys entering, but their focus was mainly on Izuku. Nobody does expect a tall, lanky teenager wearing a straitjacket to just waltz into a classroom after all, at least those that were fortunate enough to not be Izuku's classmates during the past years. It was a real question why Izuku is allowed to wear his straitjacket when he's supposed to wear their middle school uniform like anyone did. He may or may not have blackmail on the principal. Izuku merely looked amused from the obvious attention and took an empty seat on the edge of the classroom. Katsuki took the seat that was next to Izuku. 5 new people in this shitty school, the explosive boy noted as he scanned the classroom. It took a bit more time for the rest of their classmates for this year to come before the teacher finally entered. How would you know who are the new ones? Thought you didn't care about the extras in this school. Izuku raised a brow. Shut up. Good morning, class. I am Setsuno and I am your homeroom teacher for this year. Their teacher began, though Izuku and Katsuki immediately began to doze off. After a while, Katsuki quickly got back from his dozing as soon as he heard his name be called. Fuck what? He mumbled, looking around in confusion as the teacher sighed. It's your turn to introduce yourself. Name, age, quirk, the teacher instructed. Katsuki nodded and stood up. Tisk, Katsuki Bakugo, 14. My quirk is explosion. Small sparks popped from Katsuki's palms as a showcase before he sat back to his seat. Next is Midoriya. Setsuno read as the mentioned boy just waved. Izuku Midoriya, 15. My quirk is freedom. The odd name of the quirk made the transferees curious, while the rest of the classmates, except Katsuki, sighed and appeared miserable. One of those transferees tilted his head in confusion. Freedom? What kind of name for a quirk is that? He asked, looking fairly confused. Figure it out yourself. Izuku just snickered in response. Katsuki rolled his eyes, knowing well that it was impossible to figure out what the hell Izuku's quirk is without being given a full explanation from himself. Do that later, Setsuno huffed before he continued. Now, for the last 5 on the list, Hizono. A girl stood up from her seat. Izuku hummed as he inspected the girl's appearance. She has long, wavy, white hair, which is mostly tied into a ponytail, leaving 2 locks on the sides of her face, and bangs that obscures most of the right eye of her face. Her eyes are sharp, containing jet black pupils. Just because of the girl's weirdly styled white hair, Izuku immediately took a liking to her. Kanako Heizono, 14. My quirk is dust. Kanako demonstrated her quirk by creating ash-like dust from her palm before reabsorbing it. She then huffed before she sat back on her chair. Next, Tsutsumi. A girl with long, indigo-colored hair with numerous scattered pink streaks. Tied in a ponytail with 2 full shoulder-length strands of hair framing her face stood up from her seat. Kana Tsutsumi, 15. My quirk is rifle. Kana momentarily protruded a rifle gun from her right elbow before retracting it and sitting down. Next, the rest of the transferees introduced themselves, though Izuku didn't bother with remembering their names. He could always learn them later when he needs to. Setsuno nodded. Now, since today's your first day at school, I'll let you all socialize with each other first. Tomorrow we'll start the orientation. With that, he sat on his own chair and opened a book to read. Chatter amongst the classroom immediately began as the students talked with each other. Katsuki looked irritated. So we're just gonna waste time then? I could be training my quirk right now, he muttered. Izuku just chuckled and lightly poked Katsuki's cheek. Don't be a sourpuss, Kakin. Auntie Mitsuki did say you should make friends. You know? Why not do it now? Izuku tilted his head. I ain't making any friends here. Katsuki scowled. I'm not gonna see any of these extras after this year. I'm heading to another high school. Then UA as my university after all. He added. You underestimate people too much. Izuku hummed as he leaned back on his chair. Katsuki paused at his best friend's words before he shook his head. I don't underestimate people. If I do something, it's all or nothing. I just know that nobody in this class can actually match up to me. The blonde replied. Izuku glanced at Katsuki for a moment before he pouted. I could flatten you like a pancake. I mean that literally. Fuck off your quirks bullshit. Mine. Chapter 2. Sludge Villain Incident. Kaboom! Izuku launched a spinning kick towards Katsuki's midsection, but the latter sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the strike. With a savage grin, Katsuki retaliated with a heavy punch. As his fist connected with the air, an explosion erupted from his palm, heard throughout the forest. Why am I the one sparring with you again? Izuku ducked under the blast, his body contorting before he countered with a series of quick jabs and kicks, his limbs stretching with each strike to reach Katsuki. Because you're the only fucker around here that can match up against me, Katsuki huffed as he blocked and parried, his natural instincts guiding his defense. Another explosive punch was aimed at Izuku, who cartwheeled backward to evade the burst of explosion. With a sudden burst of speed, Izuku closed in, his leg extending like a whip. Katsuki barely had time to react, stumbling back from the impact. Fuck! He gasped out before quickly recovering. Boom! Izuku followed his previous kick by spinning low and sweeping his leg in a wide arc. Katsuki jumped, narrowly avoiding the leg sweep. Landing with a thud, Katsuki thrusted both of his palms forward and erupted an explosion. Izuku was sent back against a tree from the impact, but before Katsuki could react, Izuku used his rubbery properties and rebounded with blinding speeds. Izuku propelled himself forward, his body twisting midair before his foot connected with Katsuki's chest. Katsuki spat out saliva as he staggered backward from the impact. God, I fucking hate your rubber bullshit, he grumbled before letting himself fall on the ground. Izuku huffed, taking deep breaths as he sat on the ground. I did suggest that we fight without quirks this round. Fuck off. Katsuki rolled his eyes before sighing. After a bit, Izuku got up from the ground. Wanna get some drinks? He offered. Katsuki glanced at Izuku before nodding and also getting up. The two boys began to walk through the forest. We seriously gotta change the location on where we spar, Izuku said. Katsuki raised a brow. What's wrong with using a forest to spar? He asked. Izuku adopted a blank expression. First of all, your explosions can set the entire fucking forest in fire. Fair. And pretty sure we're slowly shaving that forest bald with each fight causing collateral damage. Izuku pointed at the fallen trees on their path. Katsuki slowly nodded. Fine, we'll get a new place. But where? I'll try looking up some empty places where people wouldn't see us using our quirks. Izuku nodded as they finally exited the forest, possibly for the last time. Get me a Coke. K? Izuku nodded as he looked at the vending machine. Got any ideas where the new spot would be? Katsuki asked, kicking a rock away. Izuku shook his head and caught the can of Coke that the machine had dispensed. Not yet, still thinking. Think faster then. Katsuki scoffed as he took the can from Izuku and cracked it open. Why don't you think for once? Maybe that'll finally fill your head with actual thoughts besides explosions, killing, and training, Izuku snarked. Beanpole, Katsuki growled, crushing the empty can after finishing it. Pomeranian Kuin, Izuku grinned mockingly. Boom! Before the two can truly begin bickering, they both got startled after they heard a loud explosion erupt nearby. Izuku looked at Katsuki. That wasn't from you, right? He asked, receiving a nod from the latter. Obviously, the blonde hissed. A villain Atta. Before Katsuki could even talk further, Izuku was already running towards the source of the noise. God damn it. Katsuki sighed before chasing after Izuku. The source of the explosion was nearby, if the massive trails of smoke they saw was a sign. The two ran past buildings and stores as they reached the source, only to see a massive crowd blocking their way. What the hell is happening? Katsuki asked, scowling as he tried looking past the crowd. Since Izuku was very tall, he managed to look past the crowd to see the situation. Some very big booger with eyes is holding 3 people hostage. Izuku described the situation for Katsuki. What? Katsuki looked bewildered. Oh, slime, not booger, it's no sludge? Yeah, sludge. Izuku corrected himself. Move back, all of you. A muscular man barked an order as he punched any incoming tendrils from coming any closer to the crowd behind him. Katsuki looked at the man before recognizing him. Death Arms scowled and looked at the growing mass of sludge with anger and worry. Anger at the sludge villain and worry for the hostages. "This damn villain keeps growing with more hostages," he muttered in disdain. Earlier, the villain could barely be considered a threat, only being able to escape due to him escaping through the sewers and blending with the sewage. Somehow his sludge quirk allowed him to take people hostage and force their quirks to activate, and now he managed to take several hostages. A boy who could create fire with his hands, then a girl who can create dust from her body, and finally another girl with a quirk that let her protrude a rifle from her elbow. The sludge villain cackled as his body grew further and latched on the buildings next to him. "I bet I can take on All Might with the power of these brats. Jaya ha ha ha." He laughed, his voice sounding distorted, as if it was heard from underwater. Back at the crowd, the two boys continued to watch the situation. "The villain guy's delusional too," Izuku added after hearing the villain hollering. Katsuki rolled his eyes. "All villains are delusional," he snorted. "Not all of them are, but when exposed long enough into Izuku's bullshit, yes, they become delusional." "Any ideas to get those kids out?" Death Arms asked, looking at another hero. Katsuki looked at the other hero, taking a bit before recognizing his identity. "I'd try taking the hostages out with my wood, but ugh, the bastard is breaking them before they can reach." Kamui Woods huffed, taking more civilians out from the burning buildings. "I guess these heroes are useless fodders then," Katsuki bluntly commented, hearing all the talk the heroes are having. "Hey cats!" Izuku narrowed his eyes. It took him a solid minute before he really saw the faces of the hostages and recognized two of them. "Two of the hostages are our classmates. Shouldn't we save them?" he asked. Katsuki sighed and took both of his hands out of his pockets, his sweat already glowing and making tiny explosions pop. "Whatever, let's do it," he grumbled before leaping forward. Izuku smiled. "Move!" Katsuki roared and ran past the crowd, much to the people's and the pro-hero's shock as Izuku followed him from behind. "Huh? Who the hell are you two? New weapons I can add to my collection?" The sludge villain quickly spotted the two boys running towards him. The blonde one had a scowl on his face, while the black-haired one just looked happy for some reason. "Fuck off!" Katsuki just thrusted both of his hands forward, making explosions erupt and blind the villain's eyes. "Izuku, get them!" He turned to the mentioned boy who nodded and ran closer. "Midoriya-san?" Kana Tsutsumi and Kanako Heizono identified the boy pretty easily. But then again, no one but Izuku is normal enough to wear a straitjacket for no reason. The third hostage just kept creating fire out of panic. "Heya!" Izuku just smiled, seeing the three hostages look surprised from his appearance. "Hope you guys don't mind us rescuing you all." He chuckled before stretching his arms and grabbing the three hostages and pulling them out of the sludge without any struggle. "The hell are you doing, brat?" The sludge villain recovered from his temporary blindness. He was immediately filled with rage, seeing his precious weapons, read, hostages, escape his hold before he was greeted by another explosion in the face. "Arg! Eyes on me, fucker!" Katsuki jumped from the floor and slapped both of the villain's eyes before popping another explosion. "Move it already, Izuku!" he barked before destroying a sludge tentacle. "Yes, sir." Izuku rolled his eyes but did pull the three hostages further, and once they were close, he spun his arms around them, stretching to make several loops to ensure they were secure. "Give them back!" The sludge villain roared, his tentacles wildly lashing out everywhere and forcing Katsuki to back off. Two tentacles shot out and began to race towards Izuku, but before anyone could react. "Ha ha ha!" An almighty, iconic laugh bellowed from above. "All Might!" Izuku, along with everyone else, breathed out. "I am here!" The massive legend dropped from the sky and landed in front of the sludge villain, who now appeared scared, yet his mass is still gigantic, enough to cover the entire street he latched on. They all watched in awe as All Might threw a straight, forward punch. Detroit smash. WH bang. Fuooshhh. One that blew the sludge villain apart without struggle, reducing him into mere splats against the road or sides of the buildings. The strong gust of wind completely doused the surrounding flames. The people watching looked up in awe at the mighty vortex that came out of nowhere. Rain began to fall. All Might. He changed the weather. So cool. That's the #1 hero. Awesome. All Might. Now that villain guy's totally done for. How the fuck can a punch change the weather? No idea, but God, that was cool. Punch him more. Look at the clouds. They all collectively began to cheer. Ha ha. Now this no-good villain is defeated. I trust that the heroes can handle collecting and sending him to jail. The crowd cheered as they saw their hero stand up, put his fists in his hips and laugh. The heroes currently present dutifully nodded at the man's words. Good job, the three of you, for handling the situation quite nicely. All Might turned to face the three heroes, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Backdraft, who was present in the sidelines taking care of the burning buildings, and gave them a thumbs up. The three heroes beamed from the #1 hero's praise. Anyone would if your idol, who is also the #1 hero of Japan, personally praised you, to be fair. Then he turned to face Izuku and Katsuki, who looked at the hero with different expressions. Katsuki was in awe, while Izuku just looked like he stumbled upon a friendly acquaintance. As for you two, good job. All Might laughed and gave both a pat in their shoulders. For saving the hostages, though I believe we all would prefer that the pros handle the situation next time. He chuckled. Katsuki wanted to retort, but Izuku slapped a hand over his mouth. Don't worry about it, big guy. We're doing what you said next time. The black-haired boy nodded with a thumbs up and a friendly grin on his face. Good. Now, without any more to say, away I go. Ha ha ha. The man laughed heartily before he waved and jumped away with a loud boom. Wow, I thought All Might would have been taller, Izuku commented. Bitch, you're like 7 feet tall, a fucking tree you are, Katsuki snarked. Shut up, Pomeranian Kuin, Izuku pouted. They both watched as the reporters hounded the 3 victims, fishing for some reactions for their work. We should ditch before they start hounding us, Katsuki said, with Izuku nodding in agreement. Without any more words, the two immediately ran away like they were running from death itself. The crowd of reporters failed to notice them, but Midoriya-san, Bakugo-san, the 2 girls from earlier, did notice. They promised to thank the 2 after the rest of the weekend passes. It was just a day after the sludge villain incident, but Izuku and Katsuki easily settled back to their normal routines, as if the entire incident didn't even happen in the first place. The incident might have been a big event for some, but for Izuku and Katsuki it was just another Saturday. Cats, did we have a math assignment? Izuku asked, looking bored as he tossed another chip into his mouth. Yes, we do, Katsuki sighed. You're smart. Why the fuck do you forget everything that isn't related to food? He grumbled. Izuku tossed another chip into his mouth. I'm easily distracted. Nothing I can do about it. Dr. Sakura had listed it as a drawback from my quirk. He shrugged. Katsuki nodded. His own quirk did have a similar drawback, which is the reason why he's got an explosive personality. Ah, whatever. Come to my house later. I'll let you copy mine. Katsuki huffed before he took a sip from his can of Coke. Thanks. Izuku smiled, tossing another chip into his mouth. So, any ideas for our training location? Izuku hummed at the blonde's question. Yeah, I do actually. He nodded. Ever visited Takoba Municipal Beach Park? Katsuki raised a brow. That beach? Didn't it turn into a junkyard long ago? He asked, remembering the beach's transformation from a beautiful beach spot into a junkyard over the years. Yeah, I'm thinking of using that place as our training grounds. Huh? Why? Think. Pomeranian Kuin. Think. Izuku chuckled. Nobody ever visits there, we have junk to destroy, and we can drop it off in landfills that would actually handle it, recycle and all that stuff instead of letting it rot around there. Izuku explained with Katsuki nodding. How are we supposed to bring the trash to the landfills though? We personally lift them to the landfill. Ah, weightlifting. Yup, Izuku nodded. Why are we here hanging out in the park instead of in our houses again? Katsuki huffed as he looked around the park. It was peaceful, with the tree behind them providing a nice shade. We ponder the birds and dwell upon their rotund, feathered forms, Izuku said, gesturing at the battalion of very round birds perching on many places. They all stared at Katsuki, who stared at them back with a gobsmacked expression. What? I'm bored and I dragged you here, Izuku sighed. Katsuki's right eye twitched. Ah, that makes sense. The blonde boy learned not to question the absurd insanity that Izuku brings long ago. No, the fuck it didn't. Katsuki angrily howled in his thoughts. Though he didn't really question the missing logic, that didn't mean he can't rage about it. While the two continued to talk with each other, another two found themselves walking in the park. Kana and Kanako quickly spotted Izuku, which isn't hard considering how the boy's appearance made him stick out like a sore thumb. Midoriya-san, Bakugu-san, the two girls approached. Kana seemed more enthusiastic but still reserved compared to Kanako, who just looked a bit annoyed. Izuku and Katsuki easily noticed them both and reacted differently. Hey you! Izuku waved at them while Katsuki just scoffed. What do you two bitches want? Katsuki rudely asked. He wasn't up for dealing with anyone's bullshit, not when he's dealing with Izuku's bullshit already. We're just here to thank you two for saving us yesterday, Kana stated while Kanako rolled her eyes. We probably would have been dead when you two didn't intervene, the white-haired girl added. Ah, it's no problem. Izuku just chuckled. It's not rare to have me and Cats running into situations like these. Kana just sighed, flicking a strand of her hair off her face. Still, it didn't mean you two had to help us. You could have, well, like All Might said, left it for the pros to handle. Yeah, what's up with that? You two got a crush on us or something? Kanako raised a brow as she crossed her arms. Izuku snorted. Nah, we just didn't want two of our classmates dead the next day. He shook his head. And I haven't traumatized you two yet, Izuku smiled. Excuse me? And Katsuki here is gay. Doesn't get hard even if a girl throws herself all over him. He finished, ignoring the concerned looks the two girls gave him. Shut the fuck up, beanpole, Katsuki growled, popping explosions in his palms as he swore. Fine, Pomeranian Kuin. Izuku rolled his eyes. Even then, thank you. Kana bowed and interrupted the two boys before they could actually start bickering. Wait, why did you two save us then? Kanako raised a brow. Izuku and Katsuki looked at each other before they looked back at the two girls. You guys looked like you needed help, and I just wanted to punch a villain yesterday, was the responses they got. Kana and Kanako first looked surprised and irritated. Surprised at Izuku's answer and irritated at Katsuki's answer. So, if you didn't want to punch a villain yesterday, then you wouldn't bother helping us then? Kanako sneered at Katsuki, who shook his head. Ugh, no, Rubber Brain here would have turned me into a literal pretzel if I didn't help you two out. Katsuki uncharacteristically shivered as he remembered a particular memory from the past. Izuku eerily smiled at the blonde's words. The two girls felt a bit frightened. Well, anything else you two want to say? Katsuki asked after regaining his composure. The two girls looked at each other before shaking their heads. No, that's all. I'll see you two tomorrow in school. Kana slightly bowed before leaving. Nope. See you two weirdos tomorrow. Kanako huffed and turned around, following Kana. Izuku waved as he and Katsuki watched the two girls leave the park before they disappeared off a corner. Wow, they're weird, Izuku commented with a grin on his face. Fun weird or you wanna traumatize them weird? Katsuki glanced at Izuku. Fun weird. And cats, I don't traumatize people. Izuku crossed his arms after tossing the empty bag of chips to the trash can. Katsuki snorted. Yeah, to those that haven't witnessed your white persona in action and in person yet. He muttered. Come on, I barely show my transformation out in the open. Izuku pouted. Katsuki slowly turned to glare at Izuku. Just 3 months ago, just 2 weeks after our summer vacation started, you literally fucking fought over Hall, the explosive blonde hissed. He was hurting my baby sis. Izuku huffed. You literally found Eri, a random kid that could have just been a rascal in that alleyway, and not even a second later I saw you tossing him and the shy Hasaikai around with your weird cartoon power shit. Katsuki threw his arms up, showing his exasperation. See bonus chapter 1 after this or before continuing, your choice. So, the asshat attacked first, I acted out of self-defense. I agree on Overhaul being an asshat, he is a dirty scumbag for what he did to Eri. But really you could have just knocked him out, not pull out the fucking white persona, take down the entire fucking shy Hasakai, and get an unofficial debut years earlier than anyone did. Katsuki scoffed. Cats. The dude can literally fucking destroy anything to a molecular level with a touch. Izuku retorted. Katsuki raised a finger before he clicked his tongue. Fair enough, he muttered. After a while, Katsuki looked up to the sky. How's the kid, by the way? He asked. She's doing quite nice actually, though she barely talks whenever I'm away. Izuku smiled. It's just been 2 months, but I'm already making a lot of progress with Mom over making Eri, well, recover. Eri still calls me White Warrior or Nika for some reason. He added. Katsuki hummed from Izuku's words. Huh. Isn't Nika an onomatopoeia for smiling or grinning? Katsuki muttered before chuckling. That fits you then. Why not make it your hero name or something? He suggested. Izuku blinked before he hummed. Yeah, maybe I should. The boy nodded and grinned. Heh. Nika doesn't sound bad for a hero name, and it wouldn't make Eri wrong if she keeps calling me that. He added. Yeah. Katsuki nodded. Hey, what's up with your moves? When did you come up with them? He asked. Huh. Izuku tilted his head with clear confusion. You know, imaginary move, muscles, counterblow, and giant. Oh, Izuku snapped his fingers. Those were moves I made while fighting, so I called them imaginary moves. Because, you know, I imagined them on the spot. The black-haired boy giggled. You already have 3 fucking super moves and we're not even in UA yet and you made them on the fucking spot. Blah, you have 4 years to train before we reach UA. You have a lot of time to make super moves. Izuku shrugged. True, the blonde nodded. The next few weeks passed by like a blur for Izuku. Nothing much changed except the fact that he noticed himself interacting with the 2 girls more often, ranging from waves, sharing books, resting near the same spot, to having long chats in break times. Katsuki just let the 2 extras enter Izuku's orbit. He did feel like the insanity that was his best friend would somehow become more wacky, and this was a perfect reason to make his mother back off from nagging about him having no friends besides Izuku. See, hag? I ain't a fucker that's hopeless on getting friends. The blonde yelled in his thoughts before he noticed the 3 interacting. Izuku was laughing over nothing, Kana had a happy expression on her face, and Kanako just looked, well, neutral. They were all talking, probably sharing jokes. Hoi, Izuku. Stop talking with your girlfriends and get over here already. Katsuki rolled his eyes, watching Kana and Kanako both pause at his words. He? Kana looked flustered. Fuck off, Pomeranian-kun. Kanako scoffed. Izuku just chuckled. Fine, I'm coming. He sighed, waving at the 2 girls as he followed Katsuki and walked away, disappearing once he went to a corner. Kanako hummed and narrowed her eyes. You know, Kana-chan, something about Midoriya feels familiar, she muttered. Huh. Kana raised a brow and looked at her best friend. How come? The indigo-haired girl asked. Dunno. Just felt like I saw his face somewhere before. Kanako sighed. Whatever. Forget about it, wanna get some food. I'm feelin' hungry. She turned to Kana, who nodded and began to follow her. Kana tilted her head as she twirled strands of her hair around her finger. Well, Midoriya-san does have a plain face, she commented. A plain face. Kanako glanced over her shoulder and looked at Kana. Please, we could easily spot him out of 100 people. She rolled her eyes before she focused back on the path ahead. His weird-ass outfit alone makes him stand out already. A chibi version of Izuku appeared in Kana's mind, one that still wore the original boy's eccentric outfit. Straight jacket, dark blue jeans, and straw sandals. The straight jacket alone was eccentric enough. It also initially painted Izuku as a psycho who escaped the mental hospital and still attended their school for both girls, though the boys and his blonde friend later actions during the sludge villain incident and their recent interactions proved otherwise. Izuku, despite his eccentric antics, is a good-natured person with questionably good morals. A tall, skinny man sighed as steam billowed around him. His eyes were sunken, covered in shadows, though his bright blue irises can still be seen. Shit! The man cursed in English. I'm running out of time. I really need to find a successor soon, huh? He muttered before coughing. Toshinori Yagi, the true face behind All Might. He is the complete opposite of the heroic man in terms of personality. He did not look healthy or muscular, he looked sick. The man essentially looked like a skeleton, one that would fall on itself from a weak breeze. Toshinori sighed as he looked at his hands. All Might can still keep appearing for another decade, but I'll surely become weaker by that time. I need to pass this quirk to make sure the next generation will have its own symbol of peace. He took a deep breath before letting his hands fall back to his sides. Though, the blonde glanced at the city. I'm sure that the new generation will keep the peace, even if I'm gone. He nodded. Toshinori looked around and spotted a vending machine nearby. People might think that it's odd having one on a rooftop, but it's convenient for heroes who want to sometimes stop for a short break and maybe get refreshments, which is what Toshinori is currently doing. The man watched as the machine dispensed water and happily took the bottle before twisting the cap open. I wonder how's Melissa right now, he muttered before drinking the bottle's contents. After that, Toshinori chuckled. Maybe I should call her later. I haven't talked to her in a month now, he added, remembering his niece's excited expression whenever he appears as All Might. Maybe I could ask her. Toshinori paused. If she fits the criteria, then maybe I could, he mumbled before nodding. I guess I'll go on a trip to Island. With no more words, Toshinori inflated back to his iconic form. Now empowered once again by One for All, he smiled wide. Boom! Ha ha ha! All Might laughed before he jumped off the building, leaving strong gusts of wind in his wake. Nah, cats. Did I snort some salt again, or did I really see some stick figure turn into All Might like the Hulk? Izuku asked as he stared at a nearby building with narrowed eyes. You didn't see shit, dumbass. Now help me out with this shitty claw machine. Katsuki grunted, fully focused on the money-robbing machine as he pushed in another coin to get another round. He will get that plushie no matter how long it takes. It was a bootleg All Might plushie that looked funny to Katsuki, and he was bored. So, Izuku-kun. Nedzu grabbed a cup of tea from the table. I've finalized some things with the Prime Minister according to your status of becoming a supernova. He smiled, watching the boy take a seat in front of him. See bonus chapter 1 for context of what a supernova is. Cool. What now then? Izuku tilted his head with curiosity. Nedzu raised his paw. The man agreed, though due to your power he will be putting down rules that you have to follow until you truly gain the title of supernova. The whatever the hell Nedzu should be said, watching the boy seemingly and comically deflate from his words. Worry not, he chuckled. The rules are pretty simple. The bear then took a sip from his cup before handing Izuku a paper filled with words. Just focus on these, you can have Inko-san drill in the details later. He smiled. Izuku hummed as he grabbed the paper and read the rules. Izuku Midoriya must not activate his quirk's transformation unless given direct permission from Nezu or an approved pro-hero of the principal's choice. No loopholes must be used, otherwise Izuku Midoriya will be sentenced to death. He can activate his transformation if the situation proves to be dire enough that it is life-threatening to him. Izuku Midoriya must continue hiding his quirk's true capabilities. He will only be allowed to tell others that the quirk freedom allows him to manipulate his body, though only limited to being rubbery. Oh, that's not bad actually. Reasonable too, I guess. Izuku muttered, though he still felt annoyed that he can't legally use his quirk's transformation unless given permission or in a really, really bad situation. His heart also beat slowly, as if sympathizing with his annoyance. Those were the main rules. Like I said, you can have Inko-san drill the rest of the rules later. Nezu nodded, taking another sip of tea from the cup. Could use a bit more sugar, he commented. Izuku just nodded and sighed, noticing the 3 more papers that Nezu placed on the table. He could already dread the 10 long hours of his mother repeating the contents to make him actually remember things. The boy is forgetful, barely remembering whatever he learnt in school. Yet somehow he still can show intelligence. Life really does work in mysterious ways. That or it's due to the fact logic barely exists around Izuku. Chapter 3, Bonus Chapter Aries Liberation. Izuku grew up loving the word that is associated with his quirk. Freedom. Just saying it felt good, made Izuku's heart beat louder while still following that funny rhythm that activated the mentioned quirk. The feeling of freedom is something Izuku really loved. Seeing a child covered in bandages and hollow eyes made Izuku frown. His heart beat loudly. It wanted to give this child freedom. Seeing her flinch and begin to quiver in fear at the sight of a man wearing a weird beak mask made Izuku not happy at all. His heart beat loudly. It wanted to give this child justice. And when the man roared in frustration and slammed his palm against the ground before it shattered and reformed into a spike heading to Izuku's way, Izuku grinned, feeling his heart begin to beat loudly to that funny rhythm. Eri grew up thinking of herself as a curse ever since she could properly think and speak. Everyone said so, the beak man said so. It was her own fault that her parents disappeared after all. She's a monster. And yet, every night she remembered someone's words. Wait for the white warrior, the one who will liberate us all. Hear the boys laugh, the sound of his drums. As he vanishes darkness and fills us all with light and joy, he will smile at all the world's problems and cure the ills of humanity by playing his drum. Whoever hears his music is forced to dance and sing until they cast off their black veil of despair. We wait for the joy that the boy, Nika, brings to us. Eri, despite her imagination being poor, thought of the white warrior as someone covered in white, has a big smile and a laugh that can be heard across everywhere. The white warrior, though he never had any specific facial features besides his grin, always visited Eri in her dreams, always telling her the same words, giving her enough hope to keep on going despite her horrible circumstances. For the first time in her life, Eri looked amazed as she watched the tall boy she ran into while trying to escape become the very white warrior she has been dreaming about for a year. Her heart felt funny. Doom dut da da. Doom dut da da. Doom dut da da. Izuku laughed loudly, as if he was told the greatest joke in the world as he spun in the air, momentarily turning into a white tornado. Hiya ha ha he he. Howa waha ha 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 ha. If anything, Izuku dying from laughter would be the most likely reason why he would ever be killed. His heart beat loudly and sounded like drums. Kai Chisaki, otherwise known as Overhaul, looked frustrated, confused, and angry as he watched whatever the fuck was that thing fly around with its limbs swinging in all directions. What the hell are you? Chisaki cried out and watched Izuku suddenly drop back down to the ground. The ground rippled like rubber before it bounced the boy back in the air. What kind of disease does this shit? The man added, looking around frantically before he slapped both of his hands against the ground and activated his quirk. Wouldn't you like to know, bird boy? Hi! Yahahihihia. Izuku just cackled at Chisaki's frustration before he screamed, seeing the dozens of massive spikes heading towards him. Ehhhhhhh? Izuku reacted comically, his body straightening like a ruler before his tongue shot out with his eyeballs popping out from its sockets as an over-exaggeration to his shock. Ayayayaya. He quickly reached for his eyeballs and pulled them back into their places before he began to spin violently and became a white tornado. Whoosh! The tornado then flew forward, swiftly dodging the growing spikes coming from the ground. Chisaki sweated and gritted his teeth as he activated his quirk several times, creating more spikes. In all of his life, he never encountered a quirk like this. Nobody did either, as nobody had a quirk like freedom. Chisaki saw the approaching tornado and scowled. What kind of sickness do you have, you damn brat? He slapped the floor and caused a massive pillar to erect and collide against the incoming boy. The man's eyes widened as the pillar quickly crumbled from the sheer speed that Izuku was spinning at. That won't work on me. Izuku smirked as he stopped spinning. His expression slowly turned from smug to dizzy. Woo-ah, diarizy. The boy mumbled, sounding drunk as his eyes rolled, quickly turning into comical spirals. Chisaki grunted and began to run forward. Just one touch, and this boy will be dead. Chisaki angrily thought to himself before he jumped forward and slammed his hand against the floor, causing a new pillar to be erected and act as a platform to carry him forward to Izuku. Katsuki, on the sidelines, just snorted. He knew that walks at the ass crack of dawn never end up normal, but not to this extent. He watched as Izuku fought a big-shot villain, the boy's outrageous goofiness contrasting to the sheer destruction that the opposing force is demonstrating while he's just here taking care of some brat. He promised that he wouldn't be the one watching next time a villain attacks them, but for now he has a job to do. Come on, kid. We gotta go before the idiot starts going wild and pulls the damn sky down on us, Katsuki urged, quickly scooping up Eri from the ground and running away. The girl just watched the ongoing fight with awe, her eyes wide as plates as she watched the white boy laugh loudly and bounce off the buildings like rubber. The loud sounds of a drum are still heard, still following a rhythm. Doom-dut-da-da. 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 Bang! White warrior Nika, Eri mumbled and watched in awe as Izuku comically winded up a punch before socking Chisaki right in the face, causing the man to fly away and land against the building behind him with an audible crash heard throughout the streets. Yah! Ah-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha! Izuku laughed like a madman, slapping a hand against his forehead as his legs kicked around. Katsuki just looked mildly amused but mostly annoyed. Where the hell are the heroes and why haven't they responded to this yet? I swear this should already be on the news or some such. OT. He huffed, remembering Eri's presence at the last second. As if God answered Katsuki's question, the reporters finally appeared along with the heroes. Instead of doing anything though, they just watched in disbelief as Chisaki and Izuku fought. The villain already recovered from the boy's previous attack and was just aggressively turning anything around him into spikes to attack Izuku, who only laughed and flew around them, dodging with grace, ease, and a little bit of silliness. What the fuck are we looking at? One of the heroes asked, only for another to shrug. Katsuki watched as the heroes stood by looking shocked or confused while the reporters, well, described the absurd situation as best as they could. Aren't you guys supposed to be evacuating any remaining people here? One of the reporters that had common sense asked the heroes with a judgmental tone. The heroes snapped out of their shock as they all nodded and got to work. The heroes and reporters aren't the only ones who appeared though. Wahahahaha. Hi-hee-hee how? Who are you guys supposed to be? Izuku's laughing stopped as he spotted different people. Ones that his heart could tell weren't heroes. They were all wearing some sort of strange masks, mostly resembling a bird or a beak. "What took you all so long?" Chisaki asked before he coughed. Hari Kuruno nodded. "Sorry, we only heard about and saw the situation just now thanks to the live streams and news." Chisaki huffed at Kuruno's reason. "Whatever, just kill that damn brat," he ordered, pointing at the flying Izuku in the air who was looking at them with excitement. "So he's the kiddo that was throwing you all over the damn place," Kendo Rappa muttered before he chuckled and pumped his fists. He always wanted to fight strong people, and knowing that Overhaul is being easily swatted around by a kid sounded interesting for a hot-blooded fighter like him. "Shut up," Chisaki snapped. "Everyone except Kendo and Rikia. Either distract the damn heroes or get Eri back at all costs. She's being taken away by some kid with an explosion quirk. He's a blonde, go," he angrily instructed as Rikia leapt forward, choosing to attack first. Izuku's eyes widened at the man running towards him. "Yua, you're huge." His eyes gained comical stars while Rikia grunted and managed to grab Izuku's leg. "You, Wooahhhh." Immediately, Rikia pulled Izuku down and slammed him against the ground, only for the ground to react like rubber and bounce, with an audible boing from the impact. Rikia was stunned for a second before he quickly tossed Izuku away, sending him flying until he began to skid against the ground, quickly turning into a comical ball as soon as he began to roll. "Wei-ia-weh," he screamed, his body turning into a mess of limbs, eyes, mouth, and white as he spun. Izuku opened his eyes, hearing the wind whistle as comical noises followed, ranging from bells to bonks to bangs, as he saw himself rolling across the road. "Wait, wait, 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 wait." Izuku's arms quickly stretched to let his hands reach two streetlights next to him. The poles bent like rubber, but after 5 seconds he managed to stop violently spinning and plant his feet on the ground. The boy looked around and let go of the streetlights, letting his arms snap back to their original lengths before he grinned after he saw Rikia running forward like a gorilla. "Heh, I have an idea," he muttered. "Imaginary move muscles." "Ya ha ha ha." Izuku laughed as he jumped up and flexed before his arms and chest instantly inflated, changing his previously noodly body to gain comical muscles. His legs remained the same in size though, emphasizing the comical appearance of his muscle form. Bang! 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 "Njaya!" Izuku jumped forward with the ground bouncing behind him and punched the surprised Rikia 3 times with his fists enlarging before it struck. Izuku's eyes widened as he saw cartoony stars fly around Rikia's head before he swung his right arm, had it spin for a second before landing one final blow to end his short-lived barrage. Gong! A comical sound similar to a bell was heard throughout the battlefield as Rikia was thrown back from the impact, sending him crashing next to Chisaki, who watched it all with wide eyes. Kendo, though, was ecstatic seeing how easy Rikia was sent away by 4 blows. "Haha, you're a damn riot." The man laughed as he jumped forward into battle, taking over Rikia's place as Izuku just continued laughing to himself. "Hey kid," Kendo called, making Izuku stop as the boy kept his muscle form. "Let's fight," he asked, sounding too excited for a situation that is making his boss almost have an aneurysm. Izuku tilted his head curiously at the new enemy before he smirked. "Who? Sure, that sounds fun." He nodded, his curious expression long gone and replaced by an excited one. His emerald eyes shone and briefly turned into red before it returned back to normal. "That's what I'm talking about." Kendo's mask tore apart, his own smirk being too wide for the mask to contain as he rushed forward. "Ngra!" He roared before he threw both of his fists forward, only for Izuku to catch them both. Kendo grunted and activated his quirk strong arm, making his shoulders begin to rotate and move at extreme speeds, enough to make Izuku let go and let Kendo to start sending out a flurry of punches. Bang! 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 GWA, BU, GA, BA, GUH, WA. Izuku did react to his enemy's hits like expected, but his current proportions despite being pure air somehow absorbed the strikes, much to Kendo's surprise. What kind of damn quirk does this kid have? The hot-blooded man thought to himself before his quirk deactivated. Izuku quickly threw both of his fists forward, only for Kendo to catch them both and firmly hold them. Both looked at each other before they grinned as they began to push against each other. Kendo took a step forward and watched as Izuku grunted. The boy's legs literally compressed due to the pressure, but he seemed to not notice it as they continued to push against each other. Soon, the ground cracked from the pressure of their strength, but before Izuku could react, bang! Kendo's knee struck his guts, making him gasp. Fuyui ini. Visible air burst from Izuku's mouth before he was sent flying to the air by the sheer force of air spewing out of his mouth, though he laughed. Wuo wa ea ha 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 heea. Izuku flew all around in the air as he spun, performing wild cartwheels while he flew with his limbs stretching and lashing out at anything near him. The fuck? Kendo watched, his eyes widening at the comical sight before he saw Izuku's arms stretch towards the ground and grabbed it. Imaginary move, counterblow. Izuku grinned. His eyes shined for a moment before he pulled and brought the rubberized ground over his head and then downwards towards Kendo. The ground turned into an archway, much to Kendo's shock before Izuku snickered and began to ricochet all over inside it. Ah fuck! Kendo uttered before he saw Izuku fly towards him at Mach 10. Blowing! Comical stars shot out as soon as Izuku's fist struck Kendo right in the face, and thanks to his momentum, he sent the man flying across the city, crashing through 10 buildings before he finally began to slowly stop. It was a miracle that Kendo wasn't reduced to a mere red smear when his body began to drag itself against the ground. Hee hee. Ha 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 ha. Izuku just laughed as his stretched arm snapped back to place with a resounding smack. Chisaki looked like he was having an aneurysm. Overhaul versus a new hero? Nedzu muttered as he checked on the live stream of what seems to be Overhaul, having his ass and backup handed in a silver platter. No. That person, he's not listed as a hero in the listings. He observed the strange unknown's appearance. Tall, lanky, noodly, and mainly white in color. White hair that seems to naturally billow like a cloud while resembling fire, solid clouds around the neck, and an odd quirk. The unknown being looked like he was out of place, with the thick black outlines around his body making them look like they appeared from a cartoon. What an interesting quirk. Nedzu smiled at the new puzzle in front of him, though Nedzu quickly frowned. A quirk too interesting for the HPSC to pass up, he added before carefully getting off his seat. Now where did I put it? The stoat thing muttered to himself as he searched the drawers in his office. Let's see. He took out a folder from one of the drawers and opened it, gently blowing off the dust that it released before he sighed. There you are, Nedzu smirked. See, there are actually 4 different types of heroes out there, each with their own skill sets and privileges. Type 1s, aka enforcers, are the variety the majority of people are most familiar with. They work with law enforcement to apprehend criminals, are the most common seen for press releases, etc. Type 2s, or strategists, are heroes like Nedzu himself. They focus more on intelligence and analysis, taking in information and sorting it out before relaying the most pertinent intel to the enforcers, though we do fight from time to time. Type 3s, otherwise known as fortifiers, are the heroes like Recovery Girl, who don't do any form of combat but still support and help from the sidelines. Type 4s, or simply known as backups, are heroes with quirks that are best used when working with other people while still out on the field. Think of them as a subtype for Type 3 heroes. One of those heroes could provide a significant strength boost, though his quirk requires 5 people for it to activate, needing them to work on the field rather than stay inside a safe spot. And finally, Type 5s, otherwise called supernovas, The name certainly sticked out from the rest, yes, but the person who named it was quite eccentric. Are people with a license to use their quirks however they want as long as it's for good purposes or actions that don't affect anyone and that they do not associate with any villains or commit any crime, otherwise a death penalty and a worldwide manhunt would be started against them. There are no supernovas in this era, the last one was from the second quirk generation, and that man died long ago. They are not legally required to help like other heroes are unless the situation is truly dire enough that they need the nuclear option. I'd never thought that I would be given the honor to be in an era where there is a supernova. Nedzu smiled as he took out the necessary paperwork and went out of his office. Now, let's just hope that the boy will accept my offer or at least think about it. The principal of UA University hummed, walking through the empty halls of his school. Overhaul is fine. He is not scared. No, he is in fact fine. Perfectly fine, calm, composed, collected, and etc. No, he is not at all horrified by the sight of that fucking demon laughing and making the ground bounce like rubber with whatever bullshit disease he has. That thing is not human, it didn't look. It wasn't human, not to Overhaul at least. To be fair, Izuku's body had lost most of its details, only keeping the important ones, so right now he looked like a doodle, something drawn from another world. Not this world. He'd perfectly fit in those ancient cartoons Chisaki's great, and more greats, Grandpa used to watch. He wanted it gone, more than germs. Chisaki huffed and looked to the side, to see Rikia filled with energy, causing his muscles to bulk up almost 10 times thanks to the crowd of heroes nearby. Rikia had bulked up enough to make All Might look like a pool noodle in comparison. Rikia, he breathed out as Rikia looked at his leader. Come here, he ordered. Rikia nodded and followed without any questions. Once Rikia was close enough, Chisaki quickly grabbed his shoulder and narrowed his eyes. Crush. Izuku's eyes slowly widened to comical proportions as he watched Chisaki and Rikia's shadow melt into one before it began to grow. It didn't stop, and only continued to grow as the two bodies fused, with the excess energy Rikia had collected somehow siphoning into his muscles and making them grow further until his skin wasn't able to cover itself anymore. Izuku's eyes popped out from their sockets, leaving 2 copies behind as his jaw stretched down to the ground with his tongue shooting out. Boom! 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 Now, Izuku is not facing against a person, he's facing against a fucking kaiju. Woohoo! The boy screamed as the gigantic monstrous amalgam of flesh roared. The upper half of Chisaki's body is left exposed, showing him to be connected to the kaiju inside its mouth or beak. The beast was taller than 8-story buildings, with its arms being bigger, making Izuku look like a white dot in comparison. With another roar, the many arms and hands of the kaiju began to lash out everywhere, causing further collateral damage. Izuku's eyes returned to their sockets as he grabbed his tongue and stuffed it back into his mouth before he quickly turned around. Squee! Izuku's legs began to spin before it quickly turned into white spirals. Whoa-oh-ea ha 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 ha. Izuku laughed as his legs ran forward at ludicrous speeds. He was going fast enough that his upper body began to flail, yet the smile on his face didn't leave. Die! Chisaki's distorted voice roared with the kaiju as it began to chase Izuku, with its bigger arms crushing the other buildings on its path. Boom! A fist came down, almost striking Izuku, who dodged last second and was sent flying up in the air due to impact. Wah-wah-ah-heh! Izuku yelled as he shot up in the air, going past the sky until he finally lost momentum. He looked down and chuckled. Huh! I could see my house from up here, the boy commented before looking around and grinning. He took a deep breath and bit his thumb. The heroes, reporters, and the millions that were watching through the reporter's live stream all collectively paused as they looked up at the cloudy sky. I am he. What in the name of the 50 states of America? They would have cared or cheered for All Might finally arriving, but he also paused to look up at the sky. The sky had a humanoid silhouette, one too colossal for their eyes to believe. Imaginary move, giant. The voice of the boy from earlier was heard, though now it had echoes and sounded booming, deep, as if it was a deity who spoke. The witnesses to this ridiculous, dragged-out fight that the author doesn't want to drag further watched as a gigantic foot split the thick clouds apart before the rest of the body followed. A colossal version of Izuku appeared. Boom! The last thing Overhaul saw was the color white and a wide grin. They all called the entire fight the Overhaul Incident, where an unknown hero took down the entirety of the Shai Hasaikai and the notorious S-rank villain Overhaul and his partners. The unknown hero turned out to be a boy, Izuku Midoriya, who just acted in self-defense as, according to his words, "That fuckus birdbrain tried to kill me when I was saving this small girl, Eri." Which was proven true. This bit of information is not revealed to the public for privacy, of course. Although the boy's identity is not revealed to the public, they all still cheered and hoped that he becomes a hero once he grows up. He basically is one already. Overhaul is currently facing his trial for his countless amounts of crimes, with the rest of his members still waiting on their respective pending trial for their own crimes. Izuku's parents were called in as soon as Izuku came into the nearest station. Their reactions were mixed. "Haha, you're just 14 and you're already out here talking down some high-ranking villain and his group. I'm proud of you, my boy." Hisashi guffawed through the video call as he slapped his table. He used another monitor to view a video of the whole fight. Izuku just smiled, though he still looked exhausted. "Izuku, why did you fight a big villain like that?" Inko wailed in worry as she cried a river. Literally, she's flooding the entire fucking station. "God bless Midoriya." Izuku scratched his cheek. "Sorry, Ma. The dude did attack first though, and he was taking a kid hostage, so my heart just, did its thing." Izuku apologized. He really couldn't force himself out if his heart was telling him to fight after all. "Speaking of, where's the kid you just saved?" Hisashi asked after he finished laughing at watching Overhaul's kaiju form get easily and comically squashed with a gigantic Izuku stepping on the red beast for the 10th time. Izuku glanced down, seeing Eri, who was latching onto him tightly. "Ah, she's here. She doesn't seem to want to let go, so I just let her." Izuku watched as his mom moved the phone to let Hisashi see Eri. The dragon man frowned. Hisashi was told that Eri was just barely 5 years old, but she looked malnourished, and the awful and obviously concerning amount of bandages around her limbs made him internally rage. She could pass off as your little sister if she's compared to your white persona. Her hair is white, though a bit bluish, but her eyes are the same unless someone takes a really close look. Inko commented, idly thinking about her son's transformed state. Hisashi agreed, looking at his wife as he did so. "Say, does Eri really not want to let go of you?" the dragon man asked. "Yep. She'd pretty much turn into an unresponsive statue if I let go." Izuku nodded with a frown. Just how much did Eri suffer that she immediately clung to him like some sort of safety object when he really just fought some dumbass birdbrain? The Midoriya family heard the door open as Inko and Izuku turned to see Detective Naomasa Tsukachi enter the room. "Good morning," he offered, giving the family a small bow as Inko returned the gesture. "I'd like to start by saying thank you for handling the Shai Hasakai. We've been trying to find where their exact hideout and whereabouts are for the past year now, and well, despite the destructive fight that occurred, know that none of it was your fault." Tsukachi started before he took a seat behind the desk. "Out of legality and the situation, I'm obliged to inform you three that my quirk is true or false. Whenever I ask a question, I'll know if your answer is true or false." Tsukachi waited for all of them to nod before he continued. "Now, all of my questions would be pretty basic to keep this short, so just answer honestly." He then turned to Izuku, who nodded again. "Did you start the fight?" "Nope." "Truth. Can you explain what happened before you encountered and fought Overhaul?" Well, I was walking with Katcha, wait, no nicknames, Katsuki Bakugo down the street, and when he and I entered an alleyway we found Eri. She looked, well, homeless, and had a concerning amount of bandages, so we approached her, thinking we should help her out since Katsuki wanted to be a hero, and well, I just like savant people, not be a hero though. Izuku paused to open a water bottle and drink from it. He still felt exhausted after that 2-hour-long fight. It's the longest he had used his transformation while repeatedly using some of his abilities after all. The quirk does eat up all of his calories after all. Using his transformation tripled the rate. And then Bird Guy showed up. Overhaul. Tsukachi tapped his pen. Izuku nodded. Yeah, Overhaul showed up and well, he just really reeked bad guy energy, you know? Like you can tell the guy is either carrying something that nobody would like in their body or just, threatening, especially with his plague mask. That really just tickles the gut feeling of a guy with common sense. So when the guy began to talk about being Eri's dad and everything while sounding like he's calling a pet over, my heart, did its thing. Tsukachi raised a brow at Izuku's last words. Your heart did its thing? Yeah, sometimes it just jumpstarts me into white persona. What I call my quirk's transformation thing. I'm still trying to find a better name, but anyways, whenever it really wants to save someone. All right, continue. Okay, where was I? Oh right, so my heart did its thing, and when I was done transforming the guy was already an inch away from touching my face. Yup, if my heart didn't force me into white persona then I would have been gone. Reduced to dust. Izuku nodded and took another sip from the water bottle. I trusted Katsuki to take Eri away while I handled this guy, and so started the fight. Is that all? Tsukachi stopped writing. Yup. All right, none were false, so we're going to the next questions now. At any point, did you try to purposely hurt civilians or nearby heroes? Nah, wait, when I was making the ground bounce, I'm pretty sure some of the heroes tripped over themselves. That was funny, but I didn't mean to do that though. True. Now did you intentionally traumatize Overhaul? Somewhere far away, Chisaki's eyes darted everywhere as he rapidly took heavy breaths. Everything is white. Why is it white? He did not like white. Why is it everywhere? He thought that fucking demon is far away. Why is it staring at him? Where is he? Where is it? Why is it laughing? How can he hear it laughing? Why isn't somebody taking the demon far away from him? Why doesn't it leave him? Why is it watching him? I can't breathe. I am drowning. Leave me alone. Stop. Why are you following me? Help me. Stop it. I hate you. Leave. Where am I? Stop watching. Smile. Why are you laughing? Where is Grandpa? Disease. Where is MOM? What are you? Smile. Why can't I breathe? I can't feel anything. Why can't I use my blessing? White. Who are you? Red eyes. Why are you smiling? Are you following me? Where is MOM? Leave me alone. Stop. Help me. I am drowning. Stop listening. Where is Grandpa? Disease. What are you? You're not human. I can't move. Why am I here? Disease. Where is everyone? Help me. Eri? White. I can't breathe. I am drowning. Leave me alone. Stop. Why are you following me? Help me. Stop it. I hate you. Leave. Where am I? Stop watching. Smile. Why are you laughing? Where is Grandpa? Where is MOM? What are you? Smile. Why can't I breathe? I can't feel anything. Why can't I use my blessing? White. Eri. Who are you? Red eyes. Why are you smiling? Are you following me? Where is MOM? Leave me alone. Stop. Help me. I am drowning. Stop listening. Where is Grandpa? What are you? You're not human. I can't move. Why am I here? Where is everyone? Help me. White. I can't breathe. I am drowning. Leave me alone. Eri? Stop. Why are you following me? Help me. Stop it. I hate you. Leave. Where am I? Stop watching. Smile. Why are you laughing? Where is Grandpa? Disease. Where is MOM? What are you? Smile. Why can't I breathe? I can't feel anything. Why can't I use my blessing? White. Who are you? Red eyes. Why are you smiling? Are you following me? Where is MOM? Leave me alone. Stop, help me. I am drowning. Stop listening. Where is Grandpa? What are you? You're not human. I can't move. Why am I here? Where is everyone? Help me. White. Kai Chisaki broke. Nope. Izuku shook his head. Overhaul is fine, probably. He didn't beat up the guy that much, right? True. That's all of the questions I need for now. I'll contact you, Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya, later if I need to inquire further. Tsukachi nodded and bowed. Though, there is someone that wants to speak with all three of you, he added. The three Midoriyas watched as the detective opened the door to let a creature wearing a suit in. Hisashi's skeptical expression turned into a surprised one. Greetings. Am I a bear? A dog? A mouse? Who knows? But I am the principal of UA University, Nedzu. Hello. The most likely Astote introduced himself cheerfully. He seemed eccentric. Long time no see, Nedzu. Hisashi chuckled, puffs of smoke coming out of his nostrils as he did so. Good morning, Inko offered. Izuku looked at Nedzu and his parents with confusion. Mom? Dad? You know the principal of UA? The boy asked, looking bewildered. Nedzu laughed at Izuku's question. Of course. I was there stopping your father from bursting into tears when he and your mother got married after all. The principal sighed fondly over the memory. Hisashi smiled, looking nostalgic at the mention of his marriage. Ah, Izuku nodded in response. So, I'm assuming your main interest is with my son, right? Hisashi asked as Nedzu nodded. Exactly. How I haven't really noticed the boy's quirk is a true mystery. Maybe some people didn't want me to find out and covered it up. Nedzu huffed. HPSC. Hisashi sounded bitter, his expression showing grimace. Though, that was before he remembered Dr. Hiralik. The man was proven trustworthy after Hisashi confronted him after his boy's diagnosement almost 10 years ago. Worry not, my friend. A good doctor just omitted parts of Izuku's quirk for his safety. Hisashi sighed. Oh, that clears some stuff then. The bear thing nodded and smiled. That fortunately meant the HPSC didn't know either. Anyways, I'm mainly here to ask around young Izuku's choice of career. He then turned to Izuku, who blinked in surprise. Oh, well, I was planning on applying to UA for general studies. Izuku shrugged after responding. Nedzu looked surprised. Really? Really? Nedzu hummed. Interesting. Isn't your quirk perfect for heroism, though? The stoat asked, genuinely interested over Izuku's choice. Yeah, I guess it is. But I had Mom drill in the conditions and rules if I were to become a hero, and I think it's too many rules, enough to just make getting a license kind of not worth it, you know? Still considering it though. Izuku nodded. It wasn't that he really did not want to be one, he's just not really sure yet, so he's settling with the idea of general studies to have the chance to transfer into the hero course in one sports festival. May I ask what rules made you not want to be a hero? Nedzu tilted his head. Well, you know how my quirk just turns everything into becoming rubbery? Yes, I'm quite aware of its true capabilities too. Nedzu nodded, making Izuku gasp before he remembered that the rat is the principal of UA, one of the best universities for heroes out there. Well, it would make people think that I'm causing more property damage than the villains, thus becoming infamous. I don't want to deal with people hounding me. Then, I would have to severely limit my power, which is just, I want to use my own power without any limits or anything. Izuku explained. But here's the thing, young man. I'm not here to ask you to become a Type 1 hero. Instead, I'm here to ask you to become a Type 5 hero. Nedzu chuckled. Inko and Izuku looked fairly confused, while Hisashi looked surprised. What's the difference? Heroes are heroes, right? Izuku wondered. Nedzu smiled at the boy's words. That is true, though all of the heroes belong to specific groups. Nedzu nodded. We have the Type 1 heroes, the ones people usually know, like All Might for example. Then, the Type 2 heroes, the brains of big operations, I'm under that class. The Type 3 heroes, who support the main ones in the sidelines like Recovery Girl. The Type 4 heroes are retired ones, given choice on whether or not they should act on a situation. Nedzu paused, letting the info sink in before he continued. And now we have the Type 5 heroes, the supernovas, people that wield quirks that the government can't have any control over. You, young Midoriya, fall under that class, or at least potentially fall under it should you take my offer. Nedzu smiled. Your offer? Izuku looked with curiosity. Should you attend UA and accept the task and role to become a supernova, you'll become the freest man. Though I do have to warn you, the moment you use your status as a supernova for less than good reasons, then we'll have to send out a global manhunt against you. Nedzu explained. A global manhunt? Inko shrieked, almost fainting from the thought of Izuku fighting a battalion of heroes without anyone to help him. Hisashi just chuckled. I'm sure that Izuku won't have problems dealing with all of them should it somehow come to that. Hisashi confidently said before he looked at Izuku. And I know that you would never do anything considered villainous. He added. Wait, what exactly would happen to Izuku if he does apply for becoming a Type 5 hero? Inko asked with obvious worry. Well, the boy would attend the hero course and the events or trips that are planned for the next 5 years, but he would be given different lessons, mostly in control, as we all know that the boy does not need any more power than he already has. Nedzu sighed before he sat on a chair. Hisashi hummed. I say go for it, kiddo. You're already one to many with the amount of cats you rescued from trees and grannies you helped cross the streets. He nodded and chuckled before leaning back into his chair. Inko sighed, unconsciously using her quirk to pull a razor which unintentionally scared Nedzu. Yeah, you were going to UA anyways, right, Aizu? Inko nodded. Nedzu quietly breathed out a sigh of relief as soon as the razor was put back to place. He did not like having the name Inko Midoriya and the word razor in one sentence. He did not want to become bald Nedzu, never again. Izuku looked at Nedzu for a moment before he glanced at Eri and his mom. His thoughtful expression showed that he was thinking. I'll go, on 2 conditions. Izuku raised 2 of his fingers, making a peace sign as Nedzu tilted his head. Oh, let me hear them then, he clapped. Izuku hummed, remembering one of the many safety precautions hero universities and sometimes high schools like UA has, which was to keep their students in dorms inside the UA's walls, to keep them safe from potential harm from villains or sometimes, actually most of the times, the media. Well, Mom has to move in with me to the dorms. Even if I can act dumb at times, I know that I'm unbeatable, my quirk makes that a fact. But Mom isn't. Once my quirk is revealed to the public, I know some people will start coming after me. And once they realize they can't, they'll move to my family and friends. The boy paused to turn to his mom. And no offense, Mom, he added, only for Inko to wave him off. None taken, dear. Wait, what? Izuku, I wouldn't have a place to be in UA. Inko's expression turned from passive to startled. Nedzu hummed before he nodded. Well, I was planning on finding a staff to keep the students from getting too rowdy in their dorms. Especially with what happened last time. Nedzu shivered, remembering the many destroyed dorms for the first-year hero course students. I suppose someone like Mrs. Midoriya will be able to handle that. Of course I will send out teachers to help, as some students would inevitably be more violent than the rest. He added. Inko adopted a thoughtful expression before she sighed. Fine. I'll accept the job, Nedzu-san. She nodded, making Nedzu smile and clap. Wonderful, the probable chimera exclaimed. Now for the second condition, young man? Nedzu turned his gaze back to Izuku. Food, you'll supply me and Ma a lot of food. Izuku smiled. Nedzu blinked. He honestly thought the next condition would be heavier, but no, this was quite simple. The rat thing laughed. Of course. I assure you, we will never have a time where there's no food in UA, and since we're the top class, we only serve the best of foods. He sighed after regaining his composure. Inko and Hisashi snickered in the background, knowing well about the massive costs that Nezu would have to deal with during Izuku's years in UA. Now is that truly all? Nezu tilted his head. The three Midoriyas looked at each other before they all shook their heads. Well, we do have to think of what we'll have to do with little Eri here though, Hisashi brought up. Izuku nodded, looking at the small girl, and by the looks of it, barely 4 years old, clinging to him as if her life depended on it. Like I was saying earlier, she just doesn't want to let go. He sighed. Trauma, most likely, is the reason. Nezu sighed, looking sympathetic as he glanced at the sleeping Eri. I believe that the young girl looks at you as her hero, the only one that would keep her safe, so of course she doesn't want to lose you. He related to the poor girl, as he had heard that she was used for Overhaul's inhumane experiments to create a drug that erases quirks. All because of the bastard being the biggest germaphobe of all time. Ashi? Inko looked at her husband, who nodded and seemingly understood her thoughts. Well, you would need extra company now that our boy's going to UA, even if you would be always seeing him since you're going to be managing the dorms. Hisashi sighed. Despite his head being that of a dragon, one could still tell that he had a grin on his face. What are you guys talking about? Izuku asked, looking genuinely confused as the two parents chuckled. It's obvious enough, honey, you're going to have a little sister now, one that's probably going to be very clingy. Inko chuckled, already looking at Eri with a fond look despite barely knowing her. Only if the little girl accepts, dear, Hisashi reminded with an amused chuckle. Wait, Eri, little sister? Izuku slowly digested his parents' words before he looked at Eri. For a split second, his eyes turned red with the roots of his hair melting into white before it returned to normal. Nobody noticed it. Nezu looked at the interaction with a smile. I'll leave you three alone, and I'll be looking forward to meeting you soon in UA, young man. Nezu chuckled before he got off the chair and walked to the door. And Inko, I'll contact you later for more details about your new job. Goodbye, Nezu added before he actually left, leaving the Midoriya family to chat amongst themselves. Nezu sighed, his face filled with relief as he closed the door. He felt very thankful that the boy was easily convinced to change his goal from just going to general studies and into hero class. The rat knew that there was no way the boy would survive if he chose to refuse the offer and stayed in his planned path. The boy can only choose to either be a supernova or die, Nezu thought to himself. He felt relieved that the boy didn't ask any questions about it. The government wanted control. They knew that without any control they were nothing. Although they can be dumb at times, they know that they will inevitably find someone that they cannot have any semblance of any control over. So they thought of making a special role, supernova. The supernova is the only role that promised freedom, without any control from the government. The only rule that they have to follow is that they cannot commit any acts deemed villainous. Otherwise, they will be ordering every hero to kill that supernova on sight in the hopes of removing this uncontrollable force. The government will not have any control over Izuku Midoriya. Now, the current Prime Minister, Akihito Sora, wouldn't actually be wanting any control over a person, brainwashing or grooming them or any other kind of possession. The man is actually pretty nice with good morals, but he knows when to put his foot down, which made him be respected and followed by politicians. Nezu reminded himself to visit the man later this week to tell him about the boy's quirk and be granted special protection. Moving on, Nezu also knew that the Hero Public Safety Commission would have tried to get Izuku once they found out his quirk later, but thankfully the rat found the boy first, thus stopping the agency's plans to groom the child into becoming one of their agents. If Sora did agree to giving Izuku special protection, then the HPSC will have no choice but to back off from Izuku or be completely shut down. It's the least that Nezu can do for Hisashi after the Dragon Man saved him from giving up on life. The rat sighed as he traced the scar on his eyes. I truly hope that the boy sticks to being a hero and never become a villain, he muttered. He had reviewed the entire fight, and he knew the boy's potential to either be a benevolent or a malevolent god. It's relieving to see the boy leaning more into being a benevolent one. Eri quickly accepted the offer of getting adopted into the Midoriya family after they carefully and slowly explained the whole thing of being adopted to the girl. She of course clung to Izuku immediately, always calling him White Warrior or Nika, for no reason despite Izuku's constant corrections. Chapter 4 Time passes. Cats. I've decided that I'm not going to use the transformation aspect of my quirk, at least not until I'm done with UA or when I really have to use it, Izuku stated. His voice was firm, his arms were crossed, and his face was sure, all to show that the boy is serious. His heart beat faster than it usually does. It felt annoyed, but it also understood why. Katsuki almost dropped the yakitori he was about to bite on from shock. Seriously? The blonde's eye twitched as he turned his head to look at Izuku with a shocked expression. Yeah. Okay. What brought this on? The blonde sighed and took a bite from the yakitori after he recovered from his stupor. Well, you know how I decided that I'm actually going to be a hero with you at UA? Yesterday, Izuku told Katsuki about his plans to finally follow him to the hero course rather than general studies. Katsuki felt good, as he felt like his continuous efforts for the past years to push his friend into going to UA for the hero course finally bore fruit. The explosive boy did not know about the whole supernova thing. Well, I realized that outside basic combat knowledge, and well, instincts and what I've learnt from fighting with you for years, that I do not have any skill for UA if I don't use my transformation. Izuku sighed. We've got 4 years before UA, so I have 4 years to train what I have without the transformation. Aha! And why exactly are you telling me this? Katsuki raised a brow. Izuku chuckled. Well, for one, I'm going to start thinking of real moves that I'll use without the white persona. He nodded to himself before looking at Katsuki. So, I basically need your help with brainstorming, he finished. Katsuki stared at Izuku with an exasperated expression as he tilted his head. Ha! What's the first words that comes to your mind, Pomeranian Kuin? Izuku quickly asked, interrupting Katsuki, who now looked thoughtful. Explosions, hero, power, training, firearms, kills, grenades, explosives. Katsuki began to list out his words before Izuku raised a finger. Aha! The black-haired boy exclaimed with a happy expression. There we go. Firearms. He then snapped his fingers, much to the blonde boy's confusion. What? Firearms, cats? I have ideas now. Izuku grinned and began to rub his hands together, almost like how a scheming cartoon villain would. Katsuki breathed in and breathed out. Izuku, when doing those actions, either did cool shit or shit, a solid 50-50 chance. The last time he did that was when they hotwired that asshole neighbor's car and drove it miles away since he, the neighbor, insulted Auntie Inko while the woman was gardening her flowers. Okay, Izuku, before you do shit, what are you doing? Katsuki huffed. He and Izuku found themselves in their personal training spot, at Takoba Beach after their previous chat. The beach was still a junkyard like it was a month ago, but there are a lot more destroyed scrap from their previous spars. Yeah. So remember when I said firearms earlier? Izuku asked, with the other boy nodding. Well, basically I've thought of naming my moves after them and also using them as reference. He chuckled while stretching to get his rubbery muscles loose. Katsuki tilted his head. Huh. Just watch. And watch is what Katsuki did. Gum Gum Pistol. With a grin, Izuku stretched his arm back and then quickly swung it forward. Bang! The impact was strong enough to make the large fridge explode into pieces as its remains were sent flying everywhere and either audibly crashed against the other mountains of junk behind it or landed on the sand. Izuku grunted as he felt the kickback from the strike before his arm snapped back to its original length. See? Izuku smirked, staring at the mess with a smile as he pumped his fist. Gum Gum? Katsuki looked at his friend. His expression showed that he was mildly impressed, but more curious. Izuku shrugged in response. I dunno, it just sounded right, and it does make naming stuff easier since I could just put Gum Gum before another word. The boy smiled, already thinking of many more possible moves he can perform. Don't you have imaginary move for that already? Well, yeah, but I want to put that as very special moves only for my transformation. Izuku nodded. Katsuki stared at him for a bit before shrugging. Whatever, it's your moves, not mine. He then got off the chair he was sitting on and stood up. How many moves have you made already? Izuku raised 4 of his fingers. 4. 4. Yup. Gum Gum pistol, Gatling gun, bazooka, and rifle. Izuku smiled as he listed out all of his current moves that aren't locked behind white persona. Katsuki hummed. Clearly, your ass is gonna run out of firearms to base on. Why not use other weapons or objects as a base? Izuku titled his head, seemingly deep in thought before he nodded. Sure. And so, the two began to brainstorm for the rest of the day. It didn't take long for them to realize how versatile Izuku can be even without using the white persona as they figured out ways to recreate firearms. Some of the moves that Izuku managed to create were Gum Gum Rocket, Gum Gum Stamp, Gum Gum Cannon, Gum Gum Bow Gun, Gum Gum Whip, Gum Gum Hammer, and the last is Gum Gum Battle Axe. 7 moves from just a day of experimentation, and Izuku still has 4 more years left before UA. Katsuki can only imagine the amount of techniques Izuku can make before that time comes. It makes him feel excited, knowing that it will be more challenging to fight Izuku soon. TCHK, 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 TCHK. Midoriya-san, can you please focus on our assignment? I can't just do everything, you know? Kana sighed as she watched Izuku play with the Rubik's Cube in his hands. Izuku stopped and looked up to look at Kana. Oh, sorry, he sighed, tossing the cube away. What do you need me to do? Well, Kana twirled a finger around her hair. I need you to solve these. She pushed the sheet of paper to Izuku, who sighed, taking the paper from the table. The activity sheet contained sentences written in English, and the assignment was to translate them into Japanese. Some students in the class had a hard time with it, as they weren't familiar with the language. Thankfully for Kana, she was partnered with Izuku, who learnt English due to the fact that his father, Hisashi, taught him how to when he was younger, thus resulting in the boy becoming fluent with the language both in speaking or writing. Gimme a moment. Izuku took Kana's pen before beginning to translate the given sentences. The girl watched him with a surprised expression. After a bit, he returned the sheet to Kana, who then looked at the answers. Huh, never thought you knew English, she commented. Izuku shrugged. Well, Dad runs his business overseas and I visit him sometimes on some vacations, so I decided to learn English when I was younger. He smiled, feeling a bit nostalgic. Izuku remembered the countless times he repeatedly annoyed Hisashi by purposely pronouncing some words wrong when the Dragon Man taught him English. So that's why. Kana nodded while she double-checked her own answers, comparing them to Izuku's answers and correcting any mistake she found while comparing. Yep. Izuku nodded before he yawned and glanced outside the window. Recently, Izuku has been thinking about many things. Mainly about food, about Eri, about training, and about friends. He never really had friends besides Katsuki, as they either avoided him due to his eccentric personality, habits, and antics, or just him being overly secretive about his quirk. And now, he had Kana and Kanako joining him and Katsuki in their walks or outings whenever they stumbled upon each other. Kanako and Kana are somewhat similar to him and Katsuki now that Izuku thought about it. Does he really consider both girls as friends? They are friendly with each other, they hang out often, and they are pretty cool in Izuku's opinion. But they could always just leave whenever they want to, cut off any connection. He's not even sure if he would ever see them past middle school. Well, he could ask for their numbers, but he's not sure if they're close enough for him to do that. Before Izuku could continue with his thoughts, he felt someone poke his cheek. Ha! He blinked before realizing that Kana was the one who poked him. Midoriya-san, class has already ended, she informed him. Huh, I guess I dozed off. Izuku chuckled before getting up from his chair. He can continue thinking later, for now his stomach wants food. Incredible, Toshinori remarked with wide eyes as he watched his close friend. David's shield showcased a new function for his costumes, one that makes it quickly appear or disappear with a single press of a button. Yes, I'd imagine that it's a hassle for you to always change in and out of your costumes whenever you exhaust yourself. David nodded. He still felt unsure and scared that the piece All Might built would crumble. He truly didn't want to return to the previous and much darker generations. David knows that Toshinori's quirk is beginning to deteriorate, and his time is running out. He is scared of what could happen if the world knows that All Might left, what villains will do once the symbol of peace is retired. Haha. Yes, it is sometimes a huge hassle for me to just stuff my costume into a bag. Toshinori chuckled before coughing, much to David's worry. Toshinori sighed as he finished coughing. Excuse me, he mumbled before clapping his hands. By the way, where's Melissa? I haven't seen her yet today. He smiled and continued to walk next to David. Melissa is still at her school. She should be back in an hour or so. David hummed, glancing at his watch to check the time before letting his hand fall back down. I see. I suppose you can let me see more of your tech to pass time. I am looking forward to the Almighty Mobile 2.0 for a while now. We are not calling the car the Almighty Mobile 2.0. It's Hercules, for God's sake. David sighed, looking exasperated. It doesn't mean I can't call it the Almighty Mobile anyways. Toshinori lightly laughed before he sighed. Though, I would need to ask you and Melissa for some time to talk later. Preferably somewhere with absolutely nobody else. I meant no CCTVs or recorders or any of that kind. He placed a hand on David's shoulder. Now, David looked concerned. May I ask why? Let's say my quirk is much deeper than anyone would expect. Toshinori's glare made it clear to David that he was fully serious. David couldn't help but gulp before he nodded. In a dark, cold room, a tall and bald elderly man with a weird, bushy, beige-colored beard sighed as he watched the same recordings of the overhaul incident on multiple massive monitors. Nedzu-san, he started, turning his attention from the recordings to the rat as he took his own cup of tea. I know that you are qualified in training possible supernovas, but how are we sure that the boy would not deviate from his choice to be a supernova? He has 4 years to change his choice. Nedzu just chuckled at the Prime Minister's words. Don't worry about him, he has ties that keep him on the right path. Have faith in the boy. I know you can do that, Akihito-kun. The Chimera chuckled before taking a sip of his tea. That may be, but those ties can easily be cut in those 4 years. Akihito retorted, making Nedzu sigh. If it would please you, I could ask the Midoriya family to move into UA. I would need special permissions, though. Granted. Get the boy, his mother, and his sister moved into your university as soon as possible. Make sure that they are given top-level security and have some of my agents watching over them whenever they go out. No need to give the boy his agents. We both know and saw that he can handle himself. Akihito nodded as he turned back to the monitors, watching as the transformed overhaul got stepped on by a giant's foot and was turned into a literal pancake. The boy's quirk easily held the title as the most ridiculous quirk in the world, even if its concept can be simplified down to the 3 words which are, everything goes boing. Izuku Midoriya essentially won the genetic lottery's biggest prize. Well, I'll only need the Midoriya family's consent then. I'll send the paperwork later. Nedzu shrugged after hearing what Akihito told him. I fucking hate paperwork, the elderly man grumbled to himself. Even as the Prime Minister of Japan, he is still required to suffer through paperwork like any other man in business. He's sure he can manage to force himself to persevere, if only to keep out possible headaches if the boy does become a loose cannon. Pomeranian-kun, you absolute whore. Izuku huffed with his arms crossed as he glared at Katsuki. Katsuki showed him his middle finger before he spoke. Stop acting like I stole a fucking diamond from your hands. It's just a damn cookie jar. How deep is your backyard? Is it enough to bury a body? What? Fuck you! Izuku hollered as he tackled Katsuki down to the ground. The two rolled across the ground and quickly turned into a big, comical ball of violence filled with punching, kicking, biting, and etc. The only thing censoring them both is the dust covering them both up. Kanako and Kana watched as they both sighed at the two boys' bizarre antics. I kind of want to get my nails painted black. What do you think? Kanako hummed as she glanced at her nails. Sounds fun. Maybe I could join and get mine painted indigo. Kana nodded before she tilted her head. Maybe I could also get myself some new clothes. I think they're becoming too small for me, she quietly added. Izuku and Katsuki are seen in the background still fighting to death like animals. Same here. Kanako also nodded. Well, we could also go to the mall later after school, she suggested. I'm in. Kana smiled before they continued watching the two boys brawl. The two girls were somewhat happy to have met the two, as in properly talk with them and eventually start hanging out. They quickly learnt that the two boys, especially Izuku, brought chaos everywhere they went. It was basically free entertainment for them. I'm gonna fucking kill you, you overgrown tree. I'm going to neuter you, you stupid Pomeranian. A. Yeah, life became a bit more lively for the two girls. Ha! We could definitely make money from live streaming their fights and commentating them like we're announcers at a wrestling match. Kanako snickered. Kana looked amused by the idea. The four teens did end up going to the mall later, with the two girls dragging Izuku with them while Izuku dragged Katsuki with him. The rest of the week went through without any major events, and now we found ourselves inside the Midoriya family's home. Inko sighed as she watched Izuku eat like a barbarian, chomping on meat like there's no tomorrow. She understood why Izuku needed to eat though, as his body constantly burns calories even if he's just breathing. Sweetie, can't you eat with some manners? Your sister is beginning to try copying you. Inko received a groan from Izuku, but the boy did slow down. Eri followed Izuku's action and also slowed down, much to Inko's relief. Izuku chuckled and swallowed before he sheepishly spoke. Sorry, Mom. I just haven't eaten much today. It's fine, just remember that we have Eri now, and well, you should know that she will look at you as a role model. Inko giggled while she carefully helped cut the apples into several smaller pieces for Eri. Talk. Inko paused and glanced at the door after hearing someone knock. Izuku-kun, can you get the door? She asked, now looking at Izuku, who nodded. The boy first swallowed the piece of meat he had been munching on before he stood up and walked to the door. Once he opened the door, Izuku was greeted by a big rat in a suit. Nedzu. Hello. The chimera waved his paw. Mind letting me in? Nedzu-san. Izuku blinked before he nodded and stepped aside to let the animal in. Inko saw the weird stoat thing enter and immediately fixed her posture. Eri looked adorably surprised at the sight of Nedzu, immediately thinking of him as a walking, breathing, and talking stuffed toy. Oh, Nedzu-san, good morning. Inko offered and lightly bowed. I'm guessing you're here to talk more about Izuku's situation with becoming a supernova? She tilted her head and watched as Nedzu nodded and took a seat. That, and I'm also visiting to see young Eri, though I can already see that she's settling well with her new home and family. Nedzu smiled, giving Eri a small wave. The latter reluctantly returned the wave. Inko nodded and got up from the couch. Ah, would you want me to prepare tea while we talk then? She offered. If it wouldn't be a bother, Nedzu chuckled. And, don't worry, what I have to say isn't really something heavy, just an offer. He assured Inko, who sighed while Izuku just nodded and sat on the floor, resuming to eat. After a bit, Inko returned, putting down a cup of tea and a kettle for Nedzu as she sighed. So what is it then? She asked with a worried expression. Well, the Prime Minister suggests that you three should move into UA. Nedzu calmly said as he took the teacup and sipped. Ah, I see. No, Inko did not see. Yes, well, I know that it is a very strange offer to give out of nowhere, but we all know that young Izuku-kun's abilities make him a very big target for villains. Me and the Prime Minister himself is worried for your safety as heir. Nedzu paused to lean closer to Inko. The man is worried that the boy will become a loose cannon if he sees anyone close to him be hurt. Nedzu quickly continued before Inko could respond. Now, I don't think that Izuku-kun would become a loose cannon, but the Prime Minister has to make sure. Of course, you can always deny our offer if you don't want to. He watched as the woman nodded. Well, can we think about it first? Inko asked. Of course. The offer is always open for your family. Nedzu nodded and took a sip of his tea. Though that's not all I have to say. And so, the rat continued to talk, with Inko nodding along as she listened. Izuku didn't really listen, he was more focused on helping Eri eat her food. Chapter 5. The author cannot think of any title name, whoops. Quirks are weird. They appeared out of nowhere and granted humans superpowers, ones that are previously thought to only exist in fiction. Quirks were first seen as something unnatural, wrong, or a disease. The first superpower ever to be officially recorded was manifested by a newborn baby in Qingqing City, China in the year 1981 with the ability to radiate light from its body. After this phenomenon, many people around the world began to manifest different kinds of superpowers, and not just at birth, some people showed signs of powers in their puberty. These powers became known as meta-abilities, and later was renamed into a simpler term, quirks. The cause of the phenomenon is unknown, even to this day. One research group that looked into the matter hypothesized that it was caused by the spread of a previously unknown novel disease carried by mice, while others theorized that it was actually a natural evolution of the human race. There was no solid evidence to make any of those hypotheses a fact. The first generation of quirks began. It was chaotic, with the total number of people with quirks worldwide being a measly 10%. They were called monsters or inhuman, given awful treatment with prejudice, forcing them all to hide their abilities. Some formed groups as a resistance, though they still failed. The ones without supernatural power grew afraid and formed anti-meta groups with the objective of exterminating those with abilities. The quirks of the first generation were not that strong. The quirkless were able to overpower them very easily. The fifth generation of quirks quickly followed. The total number of quirked went up to 57%. The power of quirks grew exponentially during this generation, which truly started society's collapse. Some of the quirked turned to a life of criminality, using their powers to cause chaos for their own selfish benefit. Some of the stronger people attempted to rally a following that preached a return to a peaceful and stable society. They had 10 million followers at one point, but were later murdered out of jealousy for all the attention and admiration they were getting by a villainous superhuman who was fortunately taken down later on. In the 8th generation, the profession of crime-fighting quirk users, pro-heroes, began to exist, starting in Rhode Island, USA, which caused the vigilantes that appeared from the past generations to slowly disappear. The profession continued to grow more popular and eventually became normalized. Quirk usage is regulated, though after another generation the law became more forgiving. Several licenses were made, though most of them were for heroics, some were made for normal civilians. Some quirks were deemed safe for everyday use, so most people that didn't have a quirk deemed dangerous were allowed to get a quirk license at the age of 14. Though there is something much more bizarre about quirks. There are 3 types known to the public: emitter, transformation, and mutant. But there is a secret type that is purposely hidden from the public, only letting a very small group of people part of the world government know about it. Mythical. They are quirks that appear every generation. For every generation, there is only one person who is born with a mythical type quirk. They only truly began to appear after the 3rd generation though. Sometimes, a mythic class quirk is not recorded due to one reason and another. Quirks that are classified as mythical were much stranger and stronger than other quirks from their generation, and strangely enough, they carry their own will and unconsciously shape the person to somewhat become the embodiment of that will. The first recorded mythical quirk allowed the man to cause tremors by generating absurdly strong vibrations or quakes. It was publicly classified an emitter quirk, but the government knew better. The man was, fortunately, not interested in becoming a villain. He instead used his power to protect his family from harm during that chaotic generation's time. He was found in the third generation. The second recorded mythical quirk allowed the man to turn into a legendary phoenix. The man's flames are unmatched, even at the present, and it had a special property that could seemingly revive people from the dead as long as he is able to burn them. This man was one of the first mythic class quirk user's sons and also used his quirk for the same reasons. He was found in the fourth generation. The third recorded mythical quirk allowed the man to transform into a giant gold Buddha at will, becoming an invulnerable force that nobody managed to ever hurt. The man was righteous, an advocate for justice, and led one of the strongest resistance groups against the anti-meta groups, which helped the next generations form a functioning society. He was found in the sixth generation. There were more mythic class quirks that were recorded. And the current generation's 23rd generation mythic class quirk user finally appeared, and it easily proved to be the most ridiculous one. Months had passed, and now we found our main duo walking next to each other. Both were kind of relieved that they were finished with middle school, and now nearing the end of their third year. Just a bit more before UA. "How's the moves going?" Katsuki asked. Izuku managed to get Kana and Kanako's numbers, so they managed to keep in touch, even if both girls moved away to a different city. The four of them promised each other to meet again at UA, though both girls said they were aiming for general studies instead of the hero course, thus leaving the two boys alone with themselves. It was a promise that made Izuku more excited about getting to UA after high school. Katsuki, though he wouldn't admit it, did manage to befriend Kirishima and get his number before the future redhead left to another city. "Good. I'm still trying to perfect Gatling gun, but I think I could try making a new one today." Izuku nodded as he and Katsuki walked into Takoba Beach. The junk on the beach isn't fully cleaned out yet, but the two boys can see that they are making progress. Katsuki clicked his tongue. "Tisk, it's been a week already. What's taking you so long about that move?" "Well," Izuku frowned, "the only problem left about it is controlling the range, as in getting the punches focused or widespread." "Good enough." Katsuki nodded before they both walked into a clearing. The two stared at each other for a moment before they both grinned and tensed up. Izuku moved first. Whoosh! Gum gum whip! Izuku stretched his leg towards Katsuki, who quickly rolled forward and managed to go under Izuku's leg. Kaboom! Katsuki grunted as he retaliated with a heavy haymaker. The impact sent vibrations through the air, but Izuku quickly cartwheeled away, narrowly evading the explosion that followed. Sand and junk flew around them as they fought. Izuku continued to dodge by ducking and weaving, narrowly avoiding the punches that Katsuki threw as the latter's hands erupted around him, sending more sand into the air. With a grunt, Izuku leapt and somersaulted over Katsuki, landing behind him with a thud. "The foo!" Katsuki quickly turned around, but before he could react, bang! Gum gum bullet! Izuku hollered as he stretched his arm, far behind him, quickly dashed forward before he snapped it back to deliver a powerful blow directly against Katsuki's face. The impact sent Katsuki flying through the air, crashing into a mound of discarded junk with a resounding thud. Katsuki coughed as he rose from the wreckage. "Fucking hell!" He cursed before he glared at Izuku with a manic grin on his face. The sweat on his palms ignited again, causing explosions to erupt and propel him forward. Boom! Izuku closed in for another punch, only to be caught off guard by Katsuki, who closed in and quickly unleashed a devastating explosion point-blank. The impact sent Izuku tumbling backward before he crashed into a heap of discarded metal. As the smoke cleared, Katsuki narrowed his eyes, his palms still smoking as he huffed. "That hurt," Izuku said as he slowly rose from the wreckage with a determined glint in his eyes. Katsuki scoffed. "Of course it should. Izuku just chuckled at his friend's words before his expression turned into a serious one. Both teenagers quickly dashed forward with Gum Gum Pistol. Izuku quickly threw his fist forward, letting his arms stretch as Katsuki snarled, his palms igniting with explosions. Tisk! Katsuki scoffed and quickly sidestepped past the stretched arm before he lunged forward and tackled Izuku down. The sweat on his palms glowed as they prepared to ignite. Izuku quickly noticed it and kicked the blonde in the guts. Katsuki spat out saliva from the impact as Izuku grabbed his shoulders and began to spin. Whoosh! Gum Gum Windmill. Izuku's torso began to twist repeatedly as he swung Katsuki around, gaining more speed with each twist before he grunted. Fly away! The black-haired boy hollered as he began to untwist, becoming faster and faster before he finally let go of Katsuki, sending the blonde flying. Katsuki once again crashed into a mound of discarded junk with a resounding thud, though this time more violently. Are we done yet? Izuku huffed as he looked at where Katsuki landed, only to hear the sounds of explosions cracking. Izuku's eyes narrowed as he tensed up. Guess not. He sighed before seeing Katsuki rise from the wreckage with a furious expression on his face. Boom! Katsuki roared as his palms ignited once again before he lunged faster than Izuku could react. A burst of explosion erupted through the air, scattering sand and debris in all directions. Izuku was knocked quickly off balance, but he managed to recover and stop himself from being thrown too far. Izuku grunted before he smirked and looked at Katsuki, who was quickly approaching. Okay then. He began to run forward as he stretched both his arms far back. The two teenagers began to close in, the space between them rapidly becoming smaller before Katsuki leapt forward, planning to unleash a bigger explosion, only for his eyes to widen as he watched Izuku hurl both of his arms forward. Gum Gum Bazooka! Bang! Gah! Katsuki hollered as he got struck in the stomach with both of Izuku's palms. The impact was strong enough to send Katsuki flying up in the air for a solid 30 seconds before he finally began to roll against the sand and crash into a pile of junk. Izuku's arms snapped back to their original lengths as he panted and waited to see if the blonde would manage to get up from the strong impact. After a minute of silence, he smiled, letting himself relax as he walked to where Katsuki landed. There he saw Katsuki, who was breathing heavily. He seemed to be impressed. Your moves aren't shit. I'll give you that, he begrudgingly admitted with a scowl, his hands still smoking from all the explosions earlier. Thanks. You improved too, you know? Izuku replied with a grin, offering a hand to help Katsuki up. The blonde just swatted his hand aside and got up on his own, making Izuku pout. Of course I did, and I'm not gonna stop improving. Katsuki nodded before he huffed. The two took a break afterwards before they continued to spar for the rest of their day. Unknown to the two boys, they were being watched. Nedzu easily figured out what Izuku commonly does in his free time, which is cleaning a beach-turned junkyard with his blonde friend. So he planted minuscule cameras all over Takoba Beach to monitor them. It's an invasion of privacy, sure, but Nedzu does not give a single shit, nor does the Prime Minister because he's the Prime Minister. Now, you readers could ask why they both weren't doing anything over the fact that Izuku and Katsuki are using their quirks in public despite that being illegal, but they both really just didn't care. Nedzu was happy about the situation due to the fact he was originally planning to hire people to clean up that beach but learned that the two boys are already doing it themselves, which meant he wouldn't need to toss a single yen to complete his plan for Takoba Beach. Akihiro just liked seeing the beach he visited often as a child slowly returning to its former glory. Nedzu chuckled as he and Akihiro watched Izuku and Katsuki start another sparring session. Not bad, the two of them, Akihiro remarked. He is still fairly paranoid over the boy, but he could see that Izuku has pretty good morals based on the records he saw from earlier. The boy does save a lot of cats for some reason, almost as if his body just automatically walks to the nearest cat that's in peril. Yes, Nedzu agreed with a smile on his face. They are definitely going to be more experienced than the other students that will appear in UA. He nodded. Most students, around 70% of them, only begin seriously training their quirks around a year or two before they enter a school catered towards heroics, which makes people like Izuku and Katsuki a rarity. Akihiro turned away from the monitors to face Nezu. How did the Midoriyas react to the offer of them moving in? He asked. Well, they did accept, but they will only move once Izuku starts training and studying in UA. Understandable. Akihiro sighed before he continued watching Izuku. The boy's situation is strange. His quirk is definitely mythic class, but he somehow already has access towards the quirk's full power. Normally, mythic class quirks need some sort of requirement to be fulfilled before they give the owner access to their full power, and if they didn't complete that requirement, then they'll just be stuck with the baseline powers that their quirk provided. Izuku never had that requirement, which adds up more to the confusion and mystery of his quirk. It also puts the boy in a confusing state where he can easily access the quirk's true power, but now has to learn all the things he can do in his base form. In other words, Izuku has full access to his ultimate form but barely has ideas of what he can do outside it. Compare it to playing a game, with your character having access to their strongest transformation but they still haven't learned other skills yet. Confusing. The unidentified mammal creature and the Prime Minister continued to watch the two boys with interest. Just 2 years ago, in Island, Uncle Might is ASSS Skeleton. A blonde girl cried out in horror as she looked at All Might's true form, Tashinori Yagi. The older blonde nodded at his niece's horror before he sighed. Yes, I know that this is a pretty shocking sight, Tashinori agreed. He still felt a bit offended by how much Melissa looked horrified at the sight, but he couldn't blame her, as he himself sometimes doesn't want to believe what he sees in the mirror sometimes. Melissa just kept screaming. Tashinori and David just watched her patiently. How long will she take before she stops? Tashinori asked as he turned to look at David. David raised 3 fingers. Give her 3 minutes. He answered, earning a nod from Tashinori. Fair enough. And so they waited, and once Melissa was finished with her panic rant, she looked exhausted, confused, bewildered, and shocked. The young blonde felt too many emotions, as if she just went through the 5 stages of grief under a singular second. Okay, she shakily nodded before looking at Tashinori. Since when did you, become like that? She asked, gesturing at the gaunt man's appearance. Well, it all started 5 years ago, Tashinori sighed as he pulled up his shirt, making David wince and Melissa almost hurl from the sight. It was a mess of red and purple skin with surgery scars that crossed over each other and surrounded a central point just under the left lung. It was spread all over. It went from as far down as his pelvis all the way up to his left pectoral. It was a horrible sight, especially for Melissa, who once thought of her uncle, Might, as an unbreakable pillar. This, Tashinori gestured at the injury, is an injury I got from an enemy attack years ago. He sighed, letting the shirt fall down and hide the wound. Half of my respiratory organs were destroyed, and I lost my whole stomach. No kind of healing quirk was able to heal me. Right now, I can only work as a hero for about 6 hours a day. Melissa could have sworn she heard something shatter. Wait, why are you telling me all of this then? She asked, looking confused. Her mind was still processing the fact that All Might wasn't so invincible like he seemed to be. It all relates to my quirk and a question for later, Tashinori answered. Tell me, do you know anything about my quirk? He asked, only for Melissa to frown and shake her head. Nobody knew anything about All Might's quirk. Many made countless theories about what it is, but most chalked it up as a quirk that boosts his strength or body's capabilities. Good. I would be worried if you did know something about it. The gaunt man chuckled before coughing. Once he was done coughing, he looked back up and cleared his throat. See, I always deflect questions about my quirk when it comes up, right? He waited for Melissa to nod before he continued. It's important for people to believe their symbol of peace to be a natural-born hero, But it's not true. My quirk was passed on to me like a sacred torch. A quirk that was passed on? That made Melissa felt confused, but the next words the skeletal man said made her feel like an atomic bomb dropped directly on top of her. Before I received it from my own master, I too was quirkless, just like you. Toshinori sighed, watching Melissa's thoughtful and contemplative expression instantly turn into a shocked one. Uncle Might was quirkless. Those words echoed inside the younger blonde's mind like a bell toll. Melissa closed her eyes for a moment before she sighed and let her tense shoulders relax. Okay, Uncle Might, why are you telling me all of this again? She watched Toshinori glance at David, who nodded at him. Isn't it obvious? I'm hoping that I could pass on this sacred torch to you. I deemed you worthy of my power long ago, the scrawny man said as he dramatically spread his arms. He was sure of his choice, as he already saw Melissa's heart of gold shine multiple times before. Oh, Melissa froze. Too many secrets were pouring into her brain that she's beginning to have problems processing all of it. Her, quirkless Melissa, chosen to be the next holder of All Might's fucking quirk? All of it sounded too surreal. Toshinori laughed as he stepped towards the frozen Melissa. Ha! You should see your face right now. Don't worry, I'm not going to force this thing on you. Listen well, young woman. This is your choice. Do you want to accept my awesome power or not? Wait, hold on. This is a lot to process. It's true that there's a lot of debate as to what your quirk actually is. Nobody's ever figured it out. It's one of the world's greatest mysteries. People are constantly talking about it online. Melissa said as she put her finger to his forehead before muttering. But the idea of passing on a quirk or inheriting it just doesn't make any sense. I've never heard of anything like it before. Quirks are supposed to be unique to each individual since the first. David watched his daughter with a fond smile while Toshinori just chuckled and clapped his hands, pulling Melissa out of her state. Sounds like you're overthinking this whole inheriting thing. Stop nerding out, Toshinori shouted, which stopped Melissa's muttering from continuing. You'll have to adjust your reality and accept this new truth. I can transfer my quirk to someone else, and that's just one facet of my secret abilities. The true name of my power is One for All. One for All, Melissa breathed out as Toshinori nodded. Yes, one person cultivates the power, then hands it off to another person. It then continues to grow as it's passed off. This cultivated power allows me to save those who are in need of a hero, the truth behind my strength. But why would you choose me to give a gift like that? What if I can't live up to it? The younger blonde asked, unsure if she could truly handle the responsibility of carrying the quirk of All Might. I told you already, I deemed you worthy of my quirk, and I'd be lying if I said you don't deserve to have a chance to be a hero. Toshinori gently placed a hand on Melissa's shoulder. But I never trained. I'm kind of fit since I follow a diet, sure, but I've never trained once in my life. How do I know that I'll even be able to properly use your power? Melissa frowned. Toshinori just smiled. You have 3 years before you'll go to a hero university. I'm sure we can build up your body to be powerful enough to hold the power of One for All, he reminded, with David nodding next to him. Melissa looked at her father and uncle figure for a bit before she nodded. Her previous doubtful expression transformed into a determined one. Okay, I'll do it. I'll inherit One for All. She nodded. Toshinori smiled, seeing the fiery determination in Melissa's eyes. Though, he couldn't help but feel like he's been somewhat pushed or influenced into taking this decision. Nah, it's probably nothing. The quirk didn't really feel good about its vessel's choice of not using its full capabilities, but it understood why. But freedom is not to be restrained. It will not allow itself to be chained down. If it let itself be pulled down by the rules, then it wouldn't be freedom. So, it thought to push and change certain events to produce more entertainment for the quirk to watch while it waited until his vessel finally unleashes it again. If it wasn't going to be used for a long while, then it would just have to provide itself entertainment by moving the world around. It's sure that Mother Fate wouldn't mind, as this universe had already detached long ago from what she deemed canon, ever since it chose its precious vessel and changed parts of history, and that she also favored it for being one of her more friendly and morally good children. The Quirk laughed with excitement, seeing the future events that may or may not happen due to its meddling. Meanwhile, in Muzutafu, achoo! Izuku sneezed loudly. AI? He narrowed his eyes before looking around warily. After a while, he shrugged and went back to relaxing on his bed. That was probably nothing. My heart feels kind of weird though. He yawned and then went back to sleep. He has better things to do than worry over what's probably nothing. Like sleeping, since tomorrow marks the start of his last month in high school. Chapter 6. Bonus Chapter Anchor. One of Katsuki Bakugu's first memories involved Izuku Midoriya. It wasn't anything important or some sort of big event, actually. The two boys were in Izuku's room, with a laptop open and showing them a very old video of All Might's debut, with orchestral music edited in, which helped make the moment seem more grand than it already was. They asked their parents for who the man is, and they all answered with one word: hero. Katsuki and Izuku were both amazed by the word when they were given an explanation of what it meant. For Katsuki, at least for a while, he thought of the word as similar to victory, powerful, and winner, but his parents cleared it up for him. The word protector felt more right. Just by being powerful doesn't mean you're a good hero. The reason why All Might is the best hero out there is because he protects the people, not just fighting villains and winning. Some of his memories were blurry, but the rest that he can remember sometimes involved Izuku. Izuku Midoriya was a staple in his life. When his quirk, explosion, came, everyone around him began to shower him with praises. He loved it, being told that he's the best, he's powerful, and he's going to be a hero, but also hated it at the same time. He liked the feeling of being acknowledged, but he also felt like he was being flooded with the sheer amount of people flocking to him. Then there was Izuku. He was never afraid to call Katsuki out if he does too much, always pulling him out of situations where he would have been given a bruise or something. He was like an anchor, keeping Katsuki grounded enough that the blonde eventually began to see how much his classmates and teachers are sucking up to him just because of his quirk. It was somewhat annoying for Katsuki when Izuku told him that he doesn't want to become a hero like him. It made him feel upset, somewhat betrayed, but also confused. Years later, he smirks and laughs over this particular memory, seeing the irony due to the fact that his brother is rising through the ranks faster than light. The main thing he remembered from his childhood is when Izuku's hair turned white. Chapter 7. Before the entrance exams. Today, we're going to be talking about your futures. The teacher sighed as he placed his hands on the table. The whole classroom groaned at his words. Finally, the last year in high school is almost over. The main duo shared a glance with each other. This month will be the last for you all. And of course you all will have to think seriously about your future. The man then held up a stack of papers. All the students collectively groaned or grumbled again. Look, we're supposed to be done with this already by the start of the third year, but due to complications from many universities and colleges, several high schools, which includes ours, ended up only doing this paperwork in the last month before the end of the year. He added, making more students groan. Don't worry though. All universities or colleges are still open and accepting you all. The teacher finished. Moving on, I'll pass out the handouts for your future plans now, but... He paused before rolling his eyes with an exasperated expression. Most of you guys all want to become heroes, right? He chuckled before the whole classroom exploded into cheers. The teacher smiled at the sight of his class. All right, settle down, all of you. The teacher chuckled as he gave the students in the front row the printouts for them to pass to their classmates. I'll let you all use this homeroom period to take your time filling out the forms. Just keep it quiet. We're still following the same schedule after this. He then took his seat and watched as his class collectively nodded. Well, here we are. Izuku breathed out as he took his own copy of the printout. Finally, he smiled before beginning to fill out the form. Katsuki rolled his eyes while he looked at his own copy. No need to glorify shit like this, Izuku. He grumbled while also filling out his form. Izuku nodded, but he still felt really good. The two boys finished up their own forms and passed it back to their teacher. The rest of the day went by as normal, though the topic that the students chatted about was more related to their future careers than anything else. Now we find Izuku and Katsuki walking to Takoba Beach. The beach had become their main hangout spot, even had set up a small space for them to laze around in by reusing some of the still functioning junk they found in the piles. Gotta admit, we've taken too long to clean this beach, Izuku remarked as he sighed at the sight of the junkyard. They cleaned out some of it, but they just ended up using the beach as their personal battleground, which resulted to only having 30% clean despite the fact it has been almost half a decade since they started. Katsuki nodded and agreed. Yeah, we should clean up this entire thing before UA. I don't think we'll be able to frequently come here once we're there, he said while also looking around the beach. Izuku looked at Katsuki for a bit before he grinned. Okay, how about we put down our sparring sessions to only once a week and focus on cleaning the beach then? He offered. Tisk, fine. Katsuki nodded with a scowl before he vaulted over the railing and landed on the sandy soil. What are you waiting for? Let's haul all of this shit already. He turned to look at Izuku, who grinned and followed his actions, vaulting over the railing and landing next to him. Haven't you heard? Those two are aiming for UA. A student told another student. Izuku and Katsuki never really talked about it openly, but some students began to hear their talks and sometimes heard something about UA. Earlier, they were given confirmation of what the two weird boys were planning to go to once they're out of high school. Really? Isn't their acceptance rate so low? It's around 2% if I remember correctly. Another student adds. It was very rare for a student to apply to a university like UA, especially when they're heading for the hero course. I don't think they'll fail. Both of them are strong, right? Another pointed out. It wasn't a secret that both boys were strong, judging by the rumors the students heard about them fighting commonly, and all of it sounding very aggressive. Yeah, Midoriya is also just as strong as Bakugo, even if his weird quirk just makes him rubbery or something. One of the greatest mysteries in their high school, Izuku Midoriya's quirk. Most of them just decided it was just a quirk that makes his body rubbery, but some thought otherwise due to the bizarre name it had. Who names a rubber quirk Freedom? They all suspected that the rubber aspect was just a small part of the bigger picture. They were both right and wrong. The rubber aspect was both a small and a big part of the entire picture. Why in the FUCK? Do you want to run for 10 kilometers? This shit isn't just jogging. Katsuki was practically gasping for air as he ran and followed Izuku from behind. Somehow, the rubbery teenager can run for 5 kilometers and not even look a bit winded. Katsuki genuinely worries that Dusty Bitch and literal school shooter won't be able to handle his best friend in bed once they reunite in UA. It's just 10 kilometers. Izuku laughed as he ran at full speed. Dad keeps me running for 20 more whenever he's here for vacation, and I go with him on his morning runs. He added, not knowing that Katsuki looked like an emptied-out husk, as if he became older just from running this much. Katsuki wheezed as he produced more sweat than he ever did ever since he started seriously training his quirk. An old couple that were also jogging watched as the black-haired boy and his blonde friend ran past them. Ah, I remember running with my brother like that when we were younger, the old man wistfully said with a fond look in his eyes. The old woman jogging next to him, his wife, chuckled. Ah, maybe we should visit his town on our next vacation. I do miss our nieces. She nodded, making the old man smile as they continued their jogging. The two are now taking their hourly break from training. Izuku and Katsuki sat next to each other on the sandy floor as they drank their own water bottles, a mountain of junk around them acting as cover from the hot sun. Hey, cats, what if I flip this bottle, and it lands perfectly? Izuku asked while Katsuki gulped down a bottle of water. The blonde tossed the empty bottle away and looked at Izuku before shrugging. Izuku took it as a yes and tossed his own water bottle forward, only for it to go flying in the air before it spun back and knocked another bottle from a mountain of plastic bottles. Dumbas. Oichef is fish. They both screamed at unison as the mountain of plastic bottles collapsed and buried them under. God fucking damn it, Izuku. Katsuki swore underneath their plastic grave. Whoops. Izuku was not apologetic at all. Rubbery batsered Izuku, hey. Rubbery batsered Izuku, how's things over there? Smoking hot, Kanako doing fine with studies, bored as shit though. Izuku rolled his eyes at Kanako's response before he replied. Rubbery batsered Izuku, nice. A heavy rifle, Kana studies are not boring, Kona, you're just smart enough that you already know what the teachers are teaching. Smoking hot, Kanako THX babe, and am also dumb as bricks actually. Izuku paused and raised a brow before he shook his head. It has been 2 years since the two moved out, and if he remembered correctly went on the same high school, a lot could have happened during that time frame. Rubbery batsered Izuku, whoa, when did you two hook up? Smoking hot, Kanako, like a month ago, I forgot to mention lol. Kona, you said we're going to tell them about our relationship in UA, not new ow. The flustered Kana couldn't help but whine as she buried her face into her girlfriend's bosom. Kanako just rolled her eyes and kept gently brushing Kana's hair. Smoking hot, Kanako, wait, fuck, Ina is steaming red, I forgot we're supposed to keep this a secret tea. Rubbery batsered Izuku, lol. Like his message, Izuku just snickered at the thought of a flustered Kana. Kinj explosion murder. Katsuki, Izuku, get the fuck over here, we need to continue training. Rubbery batsered Izuku, okay damn, no need to scream at the chat Pomeraniankin. Smoking hot, Kanako, ha. Anyways, me and Ina will keep cuddling, GL training you two, bye. Rubbery batsered Izuku, bye, and say thanks to Ina for me. She really helped me pass through my math exam last month thanks to her pulling an all-nighter to teach me shit. Smoking hot, Kanako reacted with a thumbs up. Back to training. Izuku nodded and put his phone back in his pocket before joining Katsuki on the beach. The rest of their third year finished, but the progress of cleaning Takoba Beach never stopped. Instead, it became faster, to the point Izuku and Katsuki managed to clean out most of it, with only 3 more mountains of junk left to clean. They were close to their goal, and they will not appear at UA without this goal being cleared. Just a few weeks left, cats, then we're there. Izuku breathed out as he looked around the beach. It was almost the complete opposite of its previous appearance from a year ago. He still couldn't help but be happy over the development, but also be a bit sad. He and Katsuki did spend a year hanging out on this beach, to the point they considered it as their spot. They even have a small spot where they put a couch and a TV to pass time during their break times in between training, so to leave this beach felt odd, giving him mixed feelings. I'd miss this beach, especially our spot. The black-haired boy sighed. Katsuki, who was listening nearby while carrying a fridge, nodded. Not much we can do about it, and besides, we both knew that this was temporary. Katsuki shrugged. Izuku nodded. True, but it still didn't mean he won't miss it, but at least he could still visit this beach whenever he wants to. Izuku, me and your dad have been talking about this for a while, but Inko started as she cut several apples into slices for Eri to snack on. Remember that offer from Nedzu to move into UA to help out in the dorms? She asked. Izuku raised a brow but nodded, prompting Inko to continue. Well, I've decided not to go through it after all. I'm not really sure if I could really keep up with you and your future classmates, along with other more students. Quirks are powerful, you know? Her sentence made Izuku pause. Oh wait, how will you be protected then? Izuku asked with a worried expression. Without Yue's help, how would his mom be safe then? Inko just smiled. Well, that's easy enough. I'm moving to the USA to live with Ashi. Your dad has always been sad whenever he leaves us once his vacation ends, right? Well, yeah, I guess that could work. Izuku nodded, knowing well of Hisashi's strength. He did ask his dad for a spar just to see if he could beat his old man in a battle without using the white persona, and turns out he got folded like an omelet and tossed around. Thankfully, he was quick to recover if he eats something. But what about Eri? He added. The white-haired girl looked at Izuku with curiosity when she heard her name was mentioned. Who would protect her? To be honest, I don't think Eri would ever sleep properly if she doesn't see or hug you every day, and visit you every night to sleep with you in the bed. Inko sighed before continuing to speak. Me and Hisashi have decided that Eri would be left with you, if that would be fine. I know that you are responsible enough to protect Eri, but the question is if you want to do so, as that would mean she would also live with you in the dorms. Izuku immediately nodded. Of course it's fine. She's my baby sister after all. He grinned, giving Eri head pats which earned him a happy giggle from the girl. And I guess you're right. He hummed, knowing well of how much Eri relied on him for comfort. Inko chuckled. Well, that's good then, since I've already contacted Nedzu and requested him to have a room for Eri that's connected to yours. Ah! Izuku just blinked. Before the mother and son duo could continue, Eri interrupted them by holding her hands out. More apples, please. She mumbled out a request, making both quickly prepare more slices of apples for her. Yahahaha! Nedzu cackled as he looked at the considered participants on the hero course's exams, with only 2 being immediately accepted. I wonder how much destruction you 2 will cause, he mumbled, looking at the still images of Izuku and Katsuki. The former was smirking, and the latter was sneering. Both were strong, and probably going to put a very high bar of how strong a first-year student should be, especially if the true nature of Izuku's quirk is given permission to be fully revealed. The rat really can't wait. A certain underground pro-hero with long, messy black hair and a hobo-like appearance couldn't help but shudder in fear. He feels like he's about to handle a Class 2 rowdy for his paycheck. Chapter 8: Entrance Exams. Today was finally the day of the entrance exams. Both Izuku and Katsuki woke up very early for this event, just hours before the gates of UA opened and let the students in. They spent an hour taking the last junk on the beach, a plastic bottle, to a nearby garbage bin, and just stood there watching the glorious sunrise as they looked at their hard work's earnings. Izuku and Katsuki decided to wear the most comfortable outfits they could find that wouldn't hinder their movement, as they both knew, from rumors, that the main goal was collecting as many points they could get during their time limit. Izuku wore a red vest and blue shorts, a combination of clothes that he grew to like after seeing them in a local market, while Katsuki wore a black tank top and gray baggy pants. They felt proud, but they also felt ready, and when the gates opened, they both entered and looked at UA with determination. They'll crush this test and get the top spots. Please head inside your designated waiting rooms. You have until 10 minutes before the doors closes. An announcement went through the speakers around the universities as every student waiting for their tests hurriedly rushed in. Only Izuku and Katsuki remained calm. I'll see you at the auditorium then, Katsuki said before he scowled and walked forward. Yeah, just try to not get lost, Kay? Izuku just nodded with a lazy smirk on his face before he frowned and looked at his surroundings, scanning every student's faces. Damn, wonder where Kanako and Kana are at though. The black-haired boy couldn't help but think of his 2 other best friends, feeling a bit disappointed not to see them around before he heard his phone pinged, indicating a notification. Once he checked his phone, he saw a message from Kanako. Smoking hot, Kanakomi and Kana went inside earlier since she didn't want to be late even if we had like 2 hours. We'll see you in Bomb-Man after the test. Kay? Oh, so that's why. All of Izuku's worries disappeared as he sighed with relief before he messaged her back. Rubbery Batsard. Izuku okay, see you 2 later then. GL on UR tests BTW. Smoking Hot, Kanako, and Nagant, Kana, reacted with a thumbs up. With no more messages to send, Izuku walked forward and went to his waiting room. Izuku spent an hour and a half waiting in the waiting room. The wait time was okay, as the room he and presumably other students were provided was comfortable, with plenty of things to distract or relax them. Izuku spent his time at the waiting room just playing with a Rubik's Cube he found on the table. He's pretty sure that Nedzu himself requested someone to place the cube, knowing of Izuku's less-than-stellar attention span. And now he's facing the pro-hero hound dog. They both took a seat and sat in front of each other, with only a table separating them. Good morning. The hero offered and sighed before he continued to speak. Izuku Midoriya, right? The black-haired boy nodded, letting Hound Dog speak further. Right? Well, it's nice to meet the person that Nedzu's been interested in for years now, but before you can be allowed to enter the hero course exams, I'll have to first ask you some questions. Nothing personal, just stuff that I need to know before we let you in our school. Would that be fine? Izuku looked at Hound Dog for a bit before he nodded. Sure. After Izuku's agreement, Hound Dog began his questions. Good. Well, first off, what is your goal here in UA? To be a hero, Izuku answered without missing a beat. Why do you want to be a hero? To help and save people. Any reasons why you decided to be a hero? As in what exactly pushed you here when you could have chosen any other occupation? I'm pretty sure Nedzu knows this already, but I have to be a hero, or else a lot of consequences would follow. But I also liked saving and helping people. Seeing them smile makes me feel good. You know? Izuku leaned back on his chair as he smiled. Hound Dog narrowed his eyes before nodding. That's odd. But he has a pretty good heart, hopefully. He hummed and stood up from his seat. All right, proceed through this door and just follow the arrows on the sides of the hall. It should lead you to the auditorium. You have half an hour before the briefing, and then the exams start. Good luck. Hound Dog pointed at the door behind him as Izuku stood up from her seat and nodded. See ya. He then left the room as Hound Dog sighed. Well, I still have to report some students, especially that perverted grapehead Tenetsu. He mumbled before growling at the thought of one specific purple-haired student, one that did not show any heroic intentions. Once Izuku walked through a pretty long hallway, he reached the doors for the auditorium and entered, seeing the massive amounts of students, all of them looking worried or afraid. He looked around before seeing a familiar blonde sitting around the middle left of the seats. Yo, cats. Izuku lazily greeted Katsuki, who turned to face Izuku before nodding. He took a seat next to Katsuki and yawned. How long did you wait in a room? An hour, Katsuki replied as he scanned the auditorium. He already marked most of them as useless extras, all for the sole reason of not having a spine or confidence at taking the hero course's exam. If they would be looking constipated right now, then why did they bother with applying here? Katsuki scoffed. He especially disliked how a student with very messy purple hair looked and just outright felt so unready for this. He couldn't even see any clues that the guy trained for this. Hell, he looked like he was about to pass out and sleep right now. Already looking at the competition, huh? Izuku tilted his head, only for Katsuki to roll his eyes. Hell no. There's no damn competition here. If anything, we are the competition. Katsuki replied. It was probably true, considering how much they both trained their bodies, mastery over their quirks, and combat capabilities. You're not wrong. Izuku nodded and crossed his arms as he leaned on his chair. The two idly chatted for a bit before the lights around the auditorium began to slowly turn off as a spotlight appeared at the podium. The pro-hero present mic went up, which made sense considering he would be heard by everyone. The main duo zoned off for most of the briefing, only paying attention when they hear something actually important. Izuku's pretty sure that some guy called him and Katsuki out for basically napping, but he didn't really care. Once the briefing was over, they were moved through hallways and entered into their assigned buses. Izuku and Katsuki ended up being placed in different buses, thus different testing sites, so they agreed to a bet. Whoever gets more points owes them a meal. Izuku yawned as he listened to the weary mutterings of the other examiners in the bus. He couldn't help but roll his eyes. I'm sure my quirk is strong enough to pass me through the tests. Right? What? You never trained your quirk or something? Izuku raised a brow. The online tests were hard enough. I couldn't even manage to cheat by searching answers in Moogle, since they made sure all questions were new and never been asked before. It's a miracle you weren't caught, Izuku scoffed. I'm sure that I can get enough points, maybe. Izuku didn't mentally comment. I don't think I want to be here anymore. Where's your resolve, huh? Izuku sighed. More worried mutterings came through, but Izuku decided to mute them and just wait until the bus delivers them to the testing site. All right, Izuku hummed as he looked at the giant cityscape just barely hidden behind the walls and a massive gate. To think that this was just 1 out of 7 testing sites made him question how much budget UA has. The examiners looked around warily before they all flinched at the sound and the sight of the massive gates opening. Izuku narrowed his eyes as he noticed the varying robots scanning the crowd of students, which made some stagger due to most of the robots being bigger than them. Whoosh! Before the students could react, they all suddenly heard a loud whistle of air as a blur of black, red, and blue zipped forward. Izuku was already in the city. The examiners watched in surprise as Izuku swung around with stretched limbs and destroyed the robots with ease, as if they were papier-mâché. "What's that idiot doing?" One examiner cried out in outrage and confusion, watching Izuku stomp on a robot's head before jumping off it and punching another with a stretched arm. "Huh, I guess there's one trigger-happy moron here," another sneered. Izuku already swung away, moving deeper into the city and leaving more destroyed robots in his path. "That's one disqualified, one less competition." Another chuckled. More comments passed by, but the longer the examiners waited, the more they became worried. 1 minute of silence. 2 minutes of silence. 3 minutes of silence. 5 minutes of silence. They all looked uneasy when it reached the 7th minute of silence before a ping was heard from the speakers, making them all sigh in relief, expecting someone to restart the test due to the idiot who rushed first. "What are you all doing? There's no countdown in real life. Get moving. The stretchy boy is already at 92 points. Chop chop." Their calm and confident expressions broke down into hysteria as soon as they heard Present Mix's announcement. "Oh shit." All of the examiners rushed through the gates like headless chickens as they all cried out, trampling on each other. The ones that managed to go past the gates felt further panic as they only saw the destroyed remains of varying robots. "Gum gum rocket." Izuku laughed as he launched himself through the air, feeling the airbrush passed against him while he flew by catapulting himself forward. His arm then shot forward, stretching until his hand managed to latch onto a pole to let him sharply turn before he let go and let his momentum carry him further in the air. "Ha ha ha ha. This is fun." Izuku kept laughing before he landed back on the ground and rolled before he jumped forward and broke out into a sprint. Come on. Where are the rest of the robots?" He looked around with a wide grin before he sent his arms forward and catapulted himself back in the air. "Yahoo-hoo!" The boy hollered as he flew once again while sniping robots on the ground with repeated gum-gum pistols. I'm somewhat disappointed and happy to see that the participants still wait around even if the gates are already open. They really expect us to hold their hands throughout their time here at UA, no? Nedzu commented as he and the rest of the teachers and judges were watching the 7 testing sites on several display screens. Some of them use information gathering abilities to plan out strategies. He continued as a feed of a participant with many different limbs used his eyes to cautiously scan through surroundings before heading forward. And others rely on their speed to pull ahead of their peers. Nedzu hummed and glanced at another monitor, seeing a feed of a blue-haired glasses-wearing participant run and then skid on the ground. His calves had engines connected to them. Then, the ones with pure power and combat ability. The 2 of the biggest monitors switched feeds to show a black-haired and a blonde participant go through the exam with ease. They both showed very good mastery over their quirks, and the rest of the teachers and judges could tell that they weren't just relying on pure talent. Gum windmill. The black-haired participant grabbed a robot and twisted his body before untwisting and spinning around like a windmill, causing the robot to crash against other more robots before he let go of its remains and run forward, presumably to hunt more robots forward. Fucking idiot! The blonde participant aggressively spun while running as his palms erupted with explosions. Any robots that were on his path were reduced into scraps. He somehow looked both controlled and uncontrolled at the same time. This year's group looks promising. Well, some of them. Prohero Midnight chimed in as she watched the monitors. She also felt a bit disappointed that around half of the total examiners for the entire Hero Course's exams didn't react well over the whole "there is no countdown in real-life" gimmick they pull off every year. At least some of them have common sense, Prohero Eraserhead added. He nodded approvingly at the two main stars of the test, both obviously trained well for their chosen occupation, but he really preferred if they both did the job faster. One seems to be having fun, and at least the other is channeling his aggression to heroics. He hummed. Well, there's still plenty of time before it's over. If I may, sir, Toshinori asked as he walked next to Nedzu, who smiled and nodded at him. You may. Nedzu just nodded, though he kept his focus on the monitor that's still showing Izuku. Toshinori nodded and opened one of the glass-covered buttons before pressing it. Good luck to you, students. And Melissa, Toshinori thought to himself as he remembered his fellow blonde and successor. Watch your step next time, Kay? Izuku instructed before he ran forward, leaving the stunned examiner, who he just saved from being punched by a robot, confused. I should have around 100 points or so by now. Gum gum bullet. He hummed before jumping up and going above a robot as his arm stretched up before snapping back and striking the robot's head, easily flattening it before he stretched his arm and swung off to another street. The zero-pointer has been released. A deep but mechanical voice announced through the speakers as the ground began to shake, making Izuku look around with confusion while the rest of the participants turned white or just began to run away. Huh? Where's everyone going? Izuku landed back on the ground and looked behind to see people running past him. Boom! 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 Izuku slowly turned around before he noticed the gigantic, green-colored zero-pointer directly glare at him, with its red eyes glowing red. Huh! I guess they really don't mess around in UA. Izuku nodded with a blank expression, even when the robot grabbed the building beside it and crushed the side, causing the rest of the building to collapse. What are you waiting for? Run! A blue-haired examiner with engines in his calves shrieked at Izuku as he ran. Izuku looked at the examiner with confusion and put his hand to his ear. Boom! Ha! Izuku did not hear the blue-haired examiner's words due to the loud noises. Run! The blue-haired examiner repeated his words, loudly this time before sharply turning and running off. Izuku just looked at the guy weirdly before shrugging and shifting his focus back to the gigantic zero-pointer. Wonder how Katz is doing? He tilted his head, acting nonchalant over the danger in front of him. Di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di. Katsuki chanted as he used his explosions to propel himself upward. Once his hand managed to grasp a part of the massive zero-pointer, he began to climb it, leaving explosions that damaged its plates as he gritted his teeth and continued chanting. The participants watched in awe or shock as the explosive blonde destroyed the zero-pointer. Boom! 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 I mean, I could just destroy the zero-pointer and get on with it, or just get more points. But do I need more points? Pretty sure around 100 is okay. Izuku crossed his arms, deep in thought as the zero-pointer moved closer. Someone help me. Before Izuku could continue thinking, though, he heard someone scream. Ha! He quickly looked at the source of the voice and noticed a girl that had her legs stuck underneath a pretty large rubble, and unfortunately for her, she was at the path of the gigantic zero-pointer. Ah, I'm supposed to help her, aren't I? Izuku hummed before nodding and running forward. The girl immediately heard his footsteps as she looked up to see Izuku rushing to her. Help! She waved before panting. Izuku nodded and grabbed the debris before lifting it off, much to the girl's relief. Thanks? She then tried to stand up, only for her to stumble back to the ground. The zero-pointer continued to move. Can't move, huh? Izuku tilted his head as the girl nodded. All right, hang on. The girl barely had the time to react when Izuku's arm stretched and began to loop around her body before tightening as he broke into a sprint and outran the approaching zero-pointer. The girl couldn't help but shriek, not used to the speeds Izuku is currently running on. 30 seconds remain, the speakers announced. By the time it did, Izuku already reached the entrance gates of the testing site, with other examiners looking exhausted or just sitting on the ground at the verge of passing out. Izuku let his arm untwist, letting the girl go as she landed on the ground. "Oof," she grunted before hissing and holding her arm. "Thanks for saving me." She thanked Izuku once again. Izuku just smiled and gave her a thumbs up. "No problem." That made the girl smile too, though it was strained. "Time's up. All the participants must return back to the entrances. Recovery girl, go through the gates and help heal injured students," the speakers announced, making all the participants sigh in relief. Izuku just crossed his arms. "Geez, maybe I should have gone for more robots," he muttered, making the nearby students look at him with shock or exasperation. The participants from the 7 testing sites were later brought back to the main building once the buses arrived. Izuku and Katsuki easily found each other, and now stood around the front gates of UA. "Where the hell are the 2 thoughts?" Katsuki scowled as he scanned the crowd. Bang! Izuku struck Katsuki's head from behind, Aunt Mitsuki style, as he spoke. "Don't call thoughts, Pomeranian-kun. They're our friends." Katsuki looked like he was about to bite someone. "You, Aizu, Boombaka." After a minute of waiting, the 2 finally heard familiar voices come from behind. Izuku quickly turned to see Kanako and Kana waving at them, the former raising her arm higher than the latter. "Who the hell are ya, Kallen Boombaka, you cancerous bitch?" Katsuki barked, lunging forward to Kanako, who only snickered, seeing the blonde get restrained by Izuku, who quickly grabbed onto Katsuki's collar. Kanako sneered. "It's you. Unless you became deaf after all of these years or some shit." She would have started bantering with Katsuki if Kana didn't pull on her sleeve. "Ona, don't make a scene," Kana sighed, calming Kanako down. "Hey, long time no see by the way." Kana then turned to face Izuku and Katsuki with a small smile on her face. "Yeah, it's been a year since we all got to visit each other in person." Izuku grinned, placing both of his arms behind his head. "How did your exams go?" He tilted his head. "It was so fucking harrrdd." Kanako dramatically whined as she leaned onto Kana's shoulder. "I think my brain turned into mush due to too much thinking," she grumbled before wrapping an arm around her girlfriend's waist. "Well, UA is one of the top universities out there after all. Of course they'll only choose the best of the best," Kana added, blushing at her girlfriend's show of affection. "How about you two though? I've heard the hero exams were a lot harder." She looked at Izuku. Izuku frowned. "It was surprisingly easier than I thought, actually." He did feel a bit disappointed that there was barely any challenge, and the only thing he had fun about is that he was allowed to swing around a literal city as a test site and crush robots. "That means we're just better than the rest of the extras that struggled here," Katsuki scoffed. "Maybe you 2 overworking dumbass just trained too much for this." Kanako knew well of how absurdly strong the 2 boys are ever since they first met in middle school. "No such thing as too much training for heroics," Izuku retorted. "Probably true." Kanako shrugged before she stretched her arms. "Anyways, let's get out of here already and go get some food. All that thinking from the test made me hungry." Izuku's stomach growled, which sounded like a monster's roar, resulting in many students around him getting startled by the noise. "True, I want to eat right now," Izuku agreed. "It's almost lunch anyways." Kana nodded as she looked at her phone. It was just 11:32 a.m., and she and Kanako has the whole afternoon to catch up with the 2 boys. They all chatted with each other on their way to the nearest restaurant, talking about their respective exams and whining or discussing the differences of their tests. Chapter 9. Time passes moving in. 2 weeks have passed since the exams happened, and Izuku and Katsuki are currently walking into the halls of UA. It only took 3 days after the test before they were mailed their acceptance letters, which are projectors, not letters, and were given the green light to move their stuff into the dorms. And instead of choosing to have the movers and trucks move their own things, our favorite not-so-mentally-well duo chose to move them, each fucking furniture, by themselves, so when they actually began moving, every student in UA watched them with confusion or bewilderment. The reason was simple: training. RRRRRRGGGHHHHHHH. Izuku and Katsuki were seen growling like literal hyenas as they manually moved for heavy pieces of furniture. It wasn't that this was new for both of them, as they did train their bodies by cleaning up Takoba Beach by carrying furniture to dumping sites. It took them 3 hours to finish moving their own furniture into their specified rooms and decorating them. However, the two boys noticed that Izuku's room was connected to a smaller room, the size of a small apartment specifically, which they were told to be for Eri. An incident happened a year ago where Eri accidentally triggered her quirk on herself, thus reverting her body and mentality back to a 6-year-old. Fortunately, her memories remained, though she described them as foggy. They went to Izuku's house to get Eri's belongings and items while also getting the horned girl herself. Despite the overhaul incident having taken place years ago, she was still uneasy with interacting with others. Moving into a new place was something that Eri was hesitant about, but it was either moving with mom or moving with Izuku. She easily chose to move with Izuku. Nika, Eri tugged at her big brother's pants, making the black-haired boy shift his attention from the room to her. Yeah? What is it? Izuku crouched down while Eri glanced around with uncertainty before she looked at him. Do we really have to move here? Eri hesitantly asked as she fiddled with her fingers. Izuku stayed silent for a bit before nodding. Yeah, we do. Well, I have to. But you could have went with mom instead. And you still could. You have a month before mom goes to dad anyways, so you have a lot of time to think if you like it here or not. He replied, earning a nod from Eri. But I want to stay with Nika. She mumbled and pouted, making Izuku chuckle and give her gentle pats in the head. You always do. Izuku playfully rolled his eyes before getting up. Say, you want to get an apple juice? He offered, making Eri's eyes widen before she nodded. Why yeah? She looked at Izuku and held her hands out, making her brother laugh before he carried her up into his arms. Go, she whispered and grabbed onto his red vest. With Eri secured, Izuku walked to the common room, seeing it empty as expected. Katz is probably doing something in his room or already went to one of the open gyms for more training, Izuku muttered before shrugging and heading to the kitchen. Once he entered, he gently placed Eri on the counter and then checked on the fridge. Eri watched her brother search for the juice boxes and tilted her head. The horned girl has recently been having some thoughts about Izuku. Despite her memories after the age of 6 were foggy, she could still remember bits of it clearly, and it's mostly about why Izuku barely turns into the White Warrior. The only times he does transform is whenever she has nightmares and needs to sleep with him and hear Nika's comforting heartbeat to calm down. Izuku did not care if doing this outright broke the 2 main rules that the Prime Minister gave him. He'd turn the world inside out. He means that literally if it meant Eri would laugh. The Prime Minister would have let him do that anyways. He understood the value of family. Well, Eri concluded that Nika needed to rest sometimes or he just likes sleeping like she does. Talk. Before Eri could continue thinking though, she became startled by the sound of a soft knock on the counter. Ah! She blinked in confusion before noticing the juice box in front of her. Right, she wanted apple juice. Izuku smiled as Eri took the apple juice and mumbled out a thank you before she began to drink it. His little sister really is one of his greatest treasures. He will become the symbol of chaos if anything or anyone harms her. A week passed, and Izuku, along with Eri and Katsuki, woke up to the sound of engines and footsteps. Izuku stepped out of his room with a sleepy Eri on his arms. Katsuki kicked his door open with a scowl on his face, clearly annoyed over being woken up too early. Katsuki would have gone back to sleep, but he wanted coffee now. Huh? Wonder if that's our classmates. Izuku tilted his head, with Eri unconsciously following the same action as he and Katsuki looked through a window. Definitely, Katsuki nodded before groaning. God, did they really have to fucking move this early in the morning? He grumbled under his breath, making sure that Eri didn't hear him. Ah, we should head down then. The black-haired boy nodded and walked to the elevator while Katsuki grunted and followed him into the elevator. Here, press this button, Eri-chan. Izuku grinned as he held up Eri like a baby and let her press the button for ground floor before he placed her on his shoulders. Eri immediately hugged Izuku's head and grabbed handfuls of his hair. Thankfully, Izuku's body was rubber, including his hair, so he didn't feel any discomfort with her tugging. And so, the elevator pinged and began to head straight down. Katsuki tapped his foot against the floor repeatedly with a neutral expression. Izuku just stared blankly at the steel walls before beginning to snooze while standing still. Eri just yawned, still not fully awake from her sleep. Katsuki glanced at Izuku and narrowed his eyes. Izuku, after snapping out of his dozing, returned the gesture and glared back at the blonde. So you guys are gonna be my classmates for UA, huh? Nice to meet all of you. A horned girl with pink skin and black eyes greeted and waved at the other people happily. Good morning. A blue-haired boy wearing glasses stiffly bowed. It is a pleasure to meet my classmates during my time here at UA. Everyone thought of him as extremely sophisticated. Huge. A girl with chestnut hair and a permanent blush on her face remarked with a shocked expression as she looked at the dorm's sheer size. Her legs felt a bit weak just from the sight, and she was going to live there? Ah, I can't wait to make my room exquisite. A flamboyant-looking blonde happily shone. Literally, there were sparks and stars around him, much to some of the other students' confusion. They all talked to each other before one of them finally opened the door and went in. Everyone joined and stepped inside the common room before a bird-headed boy noticed the elevator. Someone's in the elevator, he pointed out, getting the attention of the other students who looked at the elevator with confusion and curiosity. They watched as the small display above the elevator began to count down with each floor it passed until it finally opened. Bang! Let go of me, you rubbery fuck. Ack. Stop pulling on my pants, you Pomeranian bitch. Arg. What came out of the elevator was two violent teens fighting each other like feral dogs, rolling against the ground as they held a piece of the other's clothes or hair with snarls on their face. A second later, a small horned kid, which most found adorable, walked out of the elevator with a neutral expression. Ha! Everyone was confused at the unexpected sight as they watched the two boys roll around the common room and attack each other while the little girl just yawned and took a seat at the couch. It took them a solid minute of watching the two boys violently drag themselves around the room before they finally reacted. What are you two ruffians doing? UA is no place for such showcases of tomfoolery and delinquency, the blue-haired boy shrieked, his arm beginning to chop at fast speeds, enough to turn into a blur. Stop fucking biting, you rubber bastard. Are they also our classmates? Ribbit. A girl with frog-like aspects on her appearance tilted her head curiously before she croaked. Stop pulling on my damn ear, you rabbit asshole. Loud and violent. A boy with a rock-like head quietly muttered to himself, shivering as he watched the black-haired boy punch the blonde without hesitation. I'll stop once you bitching, you goddamn beanpole. How violent. A tall, voluptuous girl with long black hair tied into a spiky ponytail commented. She really expected more from UA to not let delinquents like these two in their course for heroes. Go fuck yourself, you damn Pomeranian. Hey, wait a minute, what's a kid doing here? A girl with purple hair and earphone jacks connected to her earlobes turned to the horned child with confusion and concern. I'm gonna kill you. I live here now, I think. That's what Nika said. The kid replied quietly, much to everyone's confusion. Who was Nika? One of the two boys that are still trying to rip each other into shreds? How was she even allowed here? Many questions filled their minds. God fucking damn it, you asshat, not the dick. Why would UA allow a child in its premises? The blue-haired boy muttered with confusion and skepticism. He was sure that the girl had to be in her own school at this hour and day, 7:12 a.m. and Monday, instead of being here. My fucking eye, you rubber fuck. Is anyone gonna stop them, or? A muscular boy with thick lips looked at his classmates with an unsure expression. Lhoho ma fucking tung. Who's gonna do it? I don't want to get dragged into their fight. I feel like I'd get tossed around if I get too close. A blonde with a black lightning-shaped streak on the left of his side fringe shook his head. Eri just sighed and carefully got off the couch before walking up to the ball of violence. Nika, I'm hungry, she mumbled, making the two weirdos instantly stop. Huh? Seriously? What do you want to eat then? Izuku or Nika to the unaware? Asked Eri, who just looked down a bit to think. The class was now given a good look at the two boys' appearances and had varying opinions. Izuku, or Nika to them, looked like he belonged to the wild or just got out of it with his simplistic red vest, dark blue cargo shorts that had scratches and tears, and his overall appearance. He was very tall though. Katsuki, or just blonde to them, looked like a delinquent. Simple as that. Well, two or more compared him to a Pomeranian. I want apples, please. Eri raised her hands as Izuku nodded. He gently and carefully picked up the horned girl back to his arms and ran to the kitchen. The class is now left with Katsuki, who is rolling his shoulders. He glanced at them and sneered. The fuck are you all looking at? Well, can you give us an explanation why you two were fighting just now? One of them asked. No, Katsuki refused before he turned to face a redhead from the group. Meet me in my room once you're done moving shit if you want to, he muttered before leaving. Sure, Katsu. The redhead sent the blonde a thumbs up with a small blush on his face. The gesture and response made the pink-skinned girl narrow her eyes with a questioning look before a teasing smirk appeared on her face. So that's the guy Eiji has been hanging out with. The girl couldn't help but mentally congratulate her friend, but she also wanted to tease him a lot right now. Meanwhile, the rest of the class sweated. They already have two established delinquents in their class, and apparently a child too for some reason. Aizawa-san, don't you think you should visit your class and help start their introductions? They can introduce themselves to each other without my help. Are you sure they can? Not really. The students unanimously decided to first move their furniture to their own rooms. It was around afternoon when they all finished and agreed to start introductions. I'll go first. The blue-haired boy stood up, straighter than a ruler as he bowed. I am Tenya Ida. It is an honor to meet you all. He then bowed, somehow perfectly bending over at a 90 degrees angle. My quirk is engine. He gestured at his calves, just pointing out the obvious. Then, the pink-skinned girl waved her arms with an excited grin. Me next. I'm Mina Ishido. Nice to meet you all. She happily introduced herself. My quirk's acid. My skin basically creates acid. Different kinds if I want to. She added. Fumikage Tokoyami. My quirk is dark shadow. The bird-headed boy nodded before a shadowy, monster-like being materialized from his abdomen. The shadow waved. Yo, I'm Fumi's quirk, dark shadow. But, the sentient quirk paused before continuing. I'm also technically his sister too, and I like having Blake as my name. She then waved again before dematerializing. Rikido Sato, my quirk is Sugar Rush. I can convert sugar into raw strength. It's nice to meet you all. The boy with thick lips nodded. The name's Denki Kaminari, and my quirk is electrification. I'm basically a taser, but I, can short-circuit my brain if I use more than my wattage limit. The blonde with a black streak on his hair then chimed in with an easygoing grin on his face. I'm Melissa Shield. My quirk is stockpile. It lets me draw out power from years' worth of stockpiled energy that I got from moving around. The blonde with glasses waved her hand. What everyone deemed as a literal goddess went next on introductions. Yaoyorozu Momo, my quirk is creation. It lets me create inanimate objects as long as I have enough lipids and I understand the atomic configuration of said object in order to reproduce it. She then politely bowed. Hey, I'm Izuka Midoriya and I will fight the entire American military and raid the White House next month. Izuku waved cheerfully with a big grin on his face. He was actually and genuinely excited to meet his new classmates. They were all weird, and that's cool in his eyes. What? Everyone, except Katsuki and Eri, the former just rolling his eyes while the latter is busy eating her sliced apples, looked at him bewildered. And my quirk is freedom. No clue if I'm allowed to say the specifics about it, so I'll just say I'm rubber. He gave them all a thumbs up. Are we not going to ask him about the fact he's allegedly going to raid the White House and fight the American military next month? Blake asked. She was confused and concerned. No one questions Izuku, you My Chemical Romance wannabe bird bitch. Katsuki scoffed, earning a glare from Fumikage and a shrug from Blake. Fair enough, she conceded. Whatever, the name's Katsuki Bakugu. Prepare to see it in the top leaderboards once I'm a pro, and my quirk is explosion. The blonde raised his palm and let his sweat ignite, popping a small explosion as demonstration. What makes you sure that you'll be in the top leaderboards once you're a pro? A boy with a very strange elbows chimed in. Hantasiro, by the way, and my quirk is tape. He added. Because I train with this idiot ever since we got our quirks. Katsuki replied. If you can survive 30 seconds without being turned into a literal pancake with his quirk on full power, then you'll know that you can get to the top, or at least somewhere near it. The rest of the people in the crowd went on their own turns to introduce themselves. The rest of the few remaining weeks before the first day was spent by everyone interacting with each other, learning more about their classmates for the rest of their stay in UA. They didn't take long to find new friends within the class or at least stick to one group. Nedzu, what the actual fuck did Midoriya mean when he said he's going to fight the American military? The Prime Minister looked at Nedzu with genuine confusion. The unidentified mammal thing only cackled.